Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Sham Kagudia. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, please do let me know. Give me a thumbs up so that I'm aware of the fact that you can hear me. Done. And those are asking how am I? Thanks a lot. I'm much better now. Last week, I am pretty sure all of you know that Thursday and Friday classes were cancelled only because of my health was not well. Okay, so that's the only reason. Now let's start. Let's start. So where we left off, let's start from that particular point. So if you remember correctly, we were discussing investment models and infrastructure. Infrastructure, where to start? We'll start that. Don't worry. We were discussing investment models, correct? So in investment models, what we have discussed foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investments. Do you remember this? Foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. Now, what is this idea of a foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment? As per Arvind Mayram committee report, if a foreign investor will make investment in purchasing financial assets such as shares, that is referred to as that is referred to as the FPI, and this investment should be less than 10%. Should be less than 10% of should be less than 10% of total number of shares of the company in the market. Then if the company will invest more than 10%, 10% or more than 10% in a listed company, of course, in a listed company, in purchasing the shares in the market, then we'll classify that as FDI. In fact, if you remember it correctly, I told you one more point. What is one more point? Even though if you're investing less than 10% today in a listed market or in a listed shares of a company, but if you can guarantee to the government that is in the next 12 months, you will increase it to, I repeat, in the next 12 months, you will increase it to at least, right, let's say 10%, then also it will be classified as EFDI. And any foreign investment that will come into unlisted market, that is a company which is not listed in the stock market, purchases the shares of this company, by default will be called as or classified as foreign direct investment. Then we have discussed then we have discussed what are the other differences between both the FDI as well as the FPI, and then we have discussed what are the routes through which FDI will come into India, what are the benefits or advantages of FDI, if there are advantages, what are the concerns related to FDI, etc., etc. That was the point of discussion of FDI. Then we started discussing FPI, foreign portfolio investment. In foreign portfolio investment, we have discussed the concept of, let's say, VRR, voluntary retention route, the FAR, right? So, etc., etc. Different types of routes we have discussed even in case of foreign portfolio investment. Then we started with the special economic zones. Yes, easy. Special economic zones. Now, what is a special economic zone? Special economic zone is a particular region that will be identified as a special economic zone by the government and will be notified. And what is the use of a special economic zone? Government will identify certain regions as special economic zones for a very simple reason. They want to promote exports. As much as possible, they want to promote exports from India. And that is the reason why if you set up a manufacturing unit, if you set up a manufacturing unit in special economic zone, government of India for first 5 years will not impose any kind of corporate taxes on you. That is 100% tax exemption. If you import anything, you do not have to pay taxes on it, right? That is import duties you don't have to pay, because we want to promote zero rating of exports. We want to promote as much exports as possible from that region. And SEZs are developed by private sector. We have a single window clearance mechanism. And more importantly, if you remember, there was one more point regarding SEZs. The SEZs will have to be a net inward remitter. I'll repeat the statement. SEZs have to be a net inward remitter. Meaning what? You are importing goods, you are paying dollars. Dollars are going outside. But on the other side, you're exporting goods, which means you're earning dollars. So the amount of dollars you are bringing into India should be more than amount of dollars that are going outside India because of you. That is a positive or a net inward remitter. So the SEZs must be a positive net inward remitters. That is one more very important provision. Then how many SEZs are operating in India? More than 200 SEZs are operating. More than 23 lakh jobs have been created within the SEZs, right? Or more than 23 lakh people are working within SEZs, and more than 30% of the total exports are done from India are happening from special economic zones. Then we discuss the issues, the problems regarding SEZs. For example, the pandemic affecting the overall exports from India, including from SEZs. Land has been acquired, but because of various issues, the land utilization has come down. Land has been utilized, infrastructure is available, companies are not locating into the SEZs. Various schemes which were there earlier, for example, merchandise exports from India scheme, service exports from India scheme, etc. Those have been withdrawn now, right? Those have been suspended because they were violating WTO guidelines, etc. So these are some of the issues that are plaguing the special economic zones. Now we were supposed to start with Baba Kalyani committee report. Let's start from Baba Kalyani committee report. Now before I go forward, many of you are asking, sir, you missed two classes last week. What about those? Right? You missed. We did not miss. You missed. I agree, right? So Thursday and Friday, I was not able to take classes. Instead of that, right, we will take classes. I will take additional classes. Please don't worry. As long as I'm going to cover the syllabus, I'll take the additional classes. You do not have to be worried, right? Because as per the schedule today as well as tomorrow, as per the schedule, today and tomorrow are supposed to be economic classes. So we'll take as usual today as well as tomorrow. In addition to that, I will also take extra classes so that I will cover the syllabus. You do not have to be worried about the syllabus. I'll cover the complete syllabus. Whatever has been given to you in the handout, I'll cover it. Okay, now don't worry. When the extra classes will be scheduled, what is the timing, etc., etc., you will come to know well in advance. You will come to know well in advance. Don't worry, right? Well in advance, you will come to know when the extra class of economy is scheduled. Okay, and those are asking how many chapters are left out. We are discussing investment, correct? We are discussing investment models. After that, we will cover infrastructure, road infrastructure, railway infrastructure, right? A civil aviation infrastructure, etc. And after that, planning is left out. Planning, 5 year plans, first 5 year plan, second 5 year plan, right? And finally, employment, unemployment. There is one more idea called as employment as well as unemployment. We'll discuss employment, unemployment, International Monetary Fund, IMF, and after that, a small concept of inclusive growth. Small concept of inclusive growth. So these are the topics which are left out. Today and tomorrow we will take classes as usual. And after that, whatever topics are left out, for that we will take up extra classes. Please don't worry. Okay, done. Come back to this. Baba Kalyani committee report. Baba Kalyani committee report. What are the recommendations of Baba Kalyani committee report? First one, the committee recommends that right now we have a region called as special economic zones. Rather than calling this scheme as a special economic zone or program as special economic zone, we need to restructure, right? We need to restructure. How? In special economic zone, my focus is to promote more and more exports, and the subsidies that I used to provide, the incentives that the government used to provide earlier were connected to the exports only. So rather than this committee recommends a reworking of this scheme. It says that we should not target exports and connect our subsidies to exports. Rather than that, let's target certain parameters such as employment creation. Let's target let's target investment done, and based on these kind of parameters such as investment done, employment created, let's connect the subsidies. Let's provide subsidies based on investments or based on employment generated, so that one, you are not going to violate any kind of WTO provisions. All of you okay with this? You are not going to violate any kind of provisions. For example, please tell me, Is there any WTO law that we have discussed where government is not supposed to provide subsidies for more investments? Have you come across that? Did I discuss anything regarding that? I repeat, where subsidies should not be provided to promote more investments. Your subsidies will be given for investments. Your subsidies will be given for employment. Right? So I hope you understand this. Again, don't say, sir, agriculture sector, etc., etc. Those are subsidies which are market distorting subsidies. If government will provide you subsidies based on your investment, is it not basically the idea for PLI, production linked incentives, where subsidies are given based on the sales, subsidies are given based on the investment? So I hope you understand. First point that has been recommended is restructure, right? This program itself need to be restructured. One, I'll call this as employment and economic enclave. Instead of SEZ, let's call this as employment and economic enclave. Second, the amount of incentives that the government will provide is connected to exports under SEZ. De-link it, remove that particular linkage, and link these subsidies or incentives to various other parameters such as investment done, right, the employment generated, etc. Third one, sunset clause. Sunset clause. What is a sunset clause? I hope you remember this. If you set up within SCZ, I said for first 5 years, 100% tax exemption is provided. Correct? Do you remember this provision? Let me know. If you set up a unit in the SCZ, government will provide 100% tax exemption. Now, please tell me, since the introduction of SCZ policy, don't you think there should be certain number of years only till when this kind of a provision must be available? Right? Just to make it much more simple, let me give you a separate example. Imagine in your locality a new restaurant is launched. Okay, let's assume in your locality a new restaurant is launched. In order to attract customers, the restaurant will provide for first 30 days or first 1 day 5% discount. Don't you think after 30 days or after 7 days or after 15 days they will remove that particular discount? Apply the same logic. So even in the SEZ policy, initially to attract these companies within the SEZ, Government of India announced 100% tax exemption. How many years, right? If you set it up, how many years you will get it? 5 years. But don't you think this provision should be available for certain number of years with onset of or with the launch of SEZ policy? Or should it be available throughout perpetuity or till perpetuity? Providing the subsidies till perpetuity doesn't provide any benefit. So argument was, we will launch SEZ policy, we will provide tax exemptions, but these tax exemptions will be available till next 15 years. We'll provide these for the next 15 years. And after 15-year period is over, sorry, we will not give you tax exemptions. We will withdraw these tax exemptions. That is basically the sunset clause. Right now, please tell me, all of you understand the meaning of the term sunset or not? In economics, I'm not talking about day-to-day sunset. Don't say, yes, sir, I can see sun is setting. I can see the sun is setting, so sunset. No, sunset means expiry period. Earlier also, we have discussed the idea of a sunset. I'll tell you the context also. Right, basically the GST. In the concept of GST, we have discussed regarding sunset provision. So argument was, there will be expiry period. There will be expiry period for this tax provision, right? So that was provided for 15 years. And this committee says, do not wind up tax provisions. Do not wind up the tax exemptions. Continue to provide the tax exemptions. In fact, have a look at this. Sunset clause to be looked into, tax incentives, right, should be increased by the government. Don't end the tax incentives, increase the incentives so that you will attract more and more investments. Promote other types of services as well. For example, most of, if you remember the last week I've discussed, one of the concern was most of the units under the special economic zone is IT and ITES. Do you remember this? Most of the units within the special economic zones are basically IT and ITES. 67% of the units are service sector related only. So this committee says, why are we targeting or why are we promoting only IT and ITES? Why can't we promote other types of services as also within the special economic zones, or to be restructured as employment economic enclaves? Right? For example, many of you ask me, sir, what kind of other services can we say, right? Or at least have you come across services where they will provide online, right? Let's say services such as banking services. What about, right? Let's say ticket booking services. What about restaurant related back-end services? So I hope you understand there are so many other types of services, but most of the units in the SEC are IT and ITS. Now the recommendation is promote other types of services as well. Formulation of a separate rules and guidelines for both manufacturing SEC as well as service sector SEC. Right now we have only one set of rules for both manufacturing as well as service sector SEC. But this committee says, let's not have only one standard operating procedure. Let's have a different set of guidelines for both the service sector as well as manufacturing sector SECs. Enable framework to promote ease of doing business. Promote more and more ease of doing business. And finally, increase the competitiveness of these manufacturing unit or service sector units by promoting railway networks, by promoting, right, let's say better road infrastructure, high speed multimodal connectivity, etc. Right? So these are some of the recommendations of Baba Kalyani Committee. Baba Kalyani Committee recommendations. Done? Now, if you ask me, sir, has Government of India implemented these recommendations? No, Government of India so far has not implemented these recommendations. Can we go forward now? That is related to special economic zones. The next model of investment is NIMZ, National Investment and Manufacturing Zones. National Investment and Manufacturing Zones. Now, before I go forward, here is a very important point. The National Investment and Manufacturing Zones, it's a very old policy, in fact. Government of India back in the year 2011, I repeat, Government of India back in the year 2011 introduced a policy by the name of National Manufacturing Policy. National Manufacturing Policy, NMP, National Manufacturing Policy. Now, under the National Manufacturing Policy, Government of India proposed a new type of investment model using which we were supposed to promote manufacturing in India. And that policy, which was announced back in the 2011 policy, was referred to as National Investment and Manufacturing Zone. All of you okay with the evolution here? I'll repeat it. Back in the year 2011, the Government of India came out with a policy by the name of National Manufacturing Policy. And in order to promote manufacturing in this policy, Government of India came out with a new type of investment model, and that investment model is referred to as a National Investment and Manufacturing Zone. Now, point number two, before I go into the provisions here, point number two, so far, many NIMZs have been approved by the government. Many NIMZs have been approved by the government. But please remember, none of these NIMZs have become operational. None of them are operational. Government has given approval, but none of them have become operational. In fact, as per government document itself, more than 20 NIMZs have been approved. But if you check online, if there is any NIMZ which is actually operating, which is actually working in India, you will see none of these NIMZs are actually operating or right working in case of India. Why? Most of these NIMZs have got stuck up because of land acquisition issues or because of right a non-availability of investments, etc., etc. Now, what are the provisions of NIMZs? Let's go one by one. Point number one, NIMZs will be developed as industrial townships. I'll repeat, NIMZs will be developed as industrial townships. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by an industrial township? Industrial towns are those where the economy is built around an industry, where the whole city, whole town is built around one industry. For example, have you heard of a city by the name of Jamshedpur? Let me know. Have you heard the name of a city, Jamshedpur? Right, very very famous, very very famous. Jamshedpur is very famous. Steel. Why it is famous for? Steel, right? So I hope you understand what is the basic genesis of the city Jamshedpur. Initially there was no city. Jamshedpur was not a city. They set up a steel manufacturing plant there. And because the requirement of a steel manufacturing plant was so high, around this manufacturing unit, economic infrastructure was constructed. City was developed, schools were developed, hotels, restaurant, the housing was developed. So I hope you understand, whenever you call a particular city as an industrial town, a place is an industrial town basically means what? It is a place where, right, the whole infrastructure that has been developed, the whole infrastructure, it could be any manufacturing units, right, anybody who's going to supply other services, housing services, etc. The whole infrastructure that is developed is associated with a particular industry. It could be a steel industry, it could be a coal industry, it could be car manufacturing unit, etc., etc. So the whole city or all the infrastructure is related to one industry itself. That is called as a industrial township. So NIMZ in India will be developed as industrial townships. And point number two, NIMZs may be involved in exports, right? They might have multiple, right, SEZs. They might have various units which are focused only on the exports, etc. So within NIMZ, we will promote services sector, we'll promote manufacturing sector, we will also have multiple SEZs, we'll promote exports also, etc. That is the point. That is the second point. Third point, for the purpose of developing NIMZ, for the purpose of developing NIMZ, government will set up a special authority. The special authority will be set up by the government, which will oversee the functioning of the National Investment and Manufacturing Zone. Now, many of you ask me, sir, what is this special authority you are talking about? There's a term called as special purpose vehicle. There is a term called as special purpose vehicle. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. Please do let me know. In most of your houses, as well as street lights, have you seen we are using the LED bulbs? Yes or no? In most of your houses, in offices, in street lights, etc., I'm pretty sure you must have observed it at least or seen it at least. We are using LED bulbs. Why? What is the reason? Government of India says that LED bulbs can save us more electricity, or they will consume lesser electricity compared to other normal bulbs, right? That is, we call these as incandescent bulbs, right? Physics students will be very happy today. Incandescent bulbs, compared to incandescent bulbs, these LED bulbs will consume lesser amount of electricity. These are environmentally much safer. So with that caveat, government of India couple of years ago started promoting consumption usage of electric bulbs. Now, in order to implement, right, or in order to ensure that throughout India there will be promotion and consumption of electric bulbs, Government of India launched an initiative by the name of National LED Program. National LED Program. National LED Program. And in order to ensure that this national LED program will be implemented appropriately or correctly, government set up a special purpose vehicle. SPV means a special purpose vehicle. The name of the special purpose vehicle is EESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited. Energy Efficiency Services Limited. So what is the role of EESL? What is the objective of setting up a new authority by the name of EESL? And Energy Efficiency Services Limited will be responsible for the implementation of National LED Program. I'll give you one more example of a special purpose vehicle. All of you heard of bullet train project? Let me know. All of you heard of bullet train project, correct? Bullet train project. And the first bullet train project in case of India is being implemented. Project is being implemented. Now, in order to implement bullet train project, Government of India has set up one more authority. Government of India has set up one more authority. The name of this new authority is High Speed Railway or High Speed Rail Corporation of India Limited. High Speed Rail Corporation of India Limited. And so, what is the role of this? A special purpose vehicle. This special purpose vehicle will have the responsibility of implementing the bullet train project. So all of you okay with the term special purpose vehicle in the context of economics? In the context of economics, special purpose vehicle means an authority, a particular authority will be set up, and the role and objective of this authority are limited to one specific scheme, one specific program, etc. like this. So in order to promote the operations of NIMZ, not to oversee the operations of NIMZ, government said we will set up a special purpose vehicle. And because as of now we do not have any operational NIMZ, don't worry about, right, what is this SPV in the context of NIMZ. Now, what are the other features? At least 30% of the area, that we are going to acquire for NIMZ will be reserved only for manufacturing purposes. Please remember this. At least 30% of the land that I've acquired, I've used for setting up an NIMZ, I will reserve it only for promotion of manufacturing sector. Next, state government can also have a policy within NIMZ to promote MSME sector. Now, please tell me, all of you okay with MSMEs? All of you will understand when I use the term MSME. Anybody in the classroom who says what is MSME today? Right, after 20 plus classes, will anybody say, or let's say, yes, 20 plus classes, will anybody say what is MSME? Last week we have covered what is MSME. So the state government can also have a policy to promote MSME within the NIMZ. And next, NIMZs will focus on usage of clean technology, will focus on usage of clean energy, will not just use any electricity, will start consuming more and more clean electricity. Next one, skill development facilities will also be set up within the NIMZs so that the labor can get access to skilling and the shift to, right, get absorbed, right, have better skill set and get absorbed in the labor market within the NIMZ. Okay, done? Right, so these are certain very important provisions of NIMZ, but again I'll repeat it. The policy has been implemented for more than a decade even today, right? More than a decade. But if you ask me, sir, compare that with SCG's functioning, compare this with other functioning, etc., there is no answer to this for a simple reason. SCGs are operational in India. You will see multiple SCGs are operational in India. And because I do not have any NIMCs which are operational, there is no way I can compare and say, okay, NIMC is a better model which is working compared to SCG, because none of them are operational. Okay, so this is one more type of investment model. Let me go to the next one. PPP, Public Private Partnership. PPP basically stands for Public Private Partnership. Now, what is this public private partnership? In a nutshell, remember this definition. In a true sense, public private partnership simply means where both government as well as private sector, I'll repeat, where both government as well as private sector will come together, sign an agreement. And this agreement is called as a concessionaire agreement. I'll repeat the statement, listen to me carefully. Public private partnership means where government as well as private sector will come together, sign an agreement, and as per the agreement, which is called as a concessionaire agreement, the private sector will provide a good or a service or will provide certain operational expertise. This kind of an agreement between the private and the government is called as a public private partnership. Now, sir, any example of a public-private partnership? Lot of road infrastructure in India is developed through public-private partnership. You have heard of airports? Let me know, at least have you heard of airports? You might not have seen them, but I'm pretty sure you must have heard of airports. So airports, right, are being operated under the public-private partnership. And do let me know, do you remember the concept of national monetization pipeline? Right? Do you remember the concept of national monetization pipeline? And even in case of national monetization pipeline, public-private partnership model is actually used. Because if you are going to provide the project on lease, if you're going to provide infrastructure on lease basis for 30 years, right, that is monetization only. Right? So even in case of national monetization, models of PPP are actually used. Okay. Now, two parties, that is one government as well as the private sector, enter into a contract to build, to operate, to provide a certain good or service. And whenever these agreements are made, that is basically, it is called as a concessionaire agreement. Concessionaire agreement. Both the parties agree to share responsibilities related to implementation and or operation of management or and management of the company. Now, why do we go for these kinds of public-private partnerships? Why do we enter into these kind of partnerships? Reasons are very simple. Point number one, just think of it. Do you think government of India has sufficient amount of money to spend on all the infrastructures in India? Let me know. Do you think government of India will have sufficient amount of money to spend on all the required infrastructures in India? Answer is no. Answer is very straightforward. No, don't think. Don't waste your time. Maybe, may not be. No. Right? The government doesn't have sufficient money. If they had sufficient money, they would have already done it. Right? Instead of waiting for private sector. So point number one, the financial resources that is available with the government is limited. Now, in that particular situation, don't you think it makes more sense for the government to attract investment from the private sector? Correct? It makes more sense for the government to attract investment from the private sector. That is a point number one. Point number two, whenever you make a comparison between government implementing the project or the government agencies developing a project and private sector developing a project, it is generally seen that the private agencies or private sector will complete the project in a much efficient manner compared to government. I hope you understand the statement. I'm not saying private sector is always the best. I'm not saying that. I'm saying private sector, when compared to the government, is efficient in terms of utilizing resources. It is efficient in terms of implementing the project in a sooner time compared to the government agencies. Third, private sector has huge amount of money. Private sector has huge amount of money. They are thinking of investing in various sectors and generating revenues. So one type of investment model that will provide them these good kind of returns is a public private partnership model. And fourth one, whenever private sector is present in a PPP model or in a type of PPP project, they expect that government is also a party. Government agencies are also involved, which means it might become very easy for me to get the licenses. It might become very easy for me to get all the required approvals because one of the parties in the project is government itself. So these are some of the reasons. These are some of the reasons as to why we actually promote the type of PPPs, public-private partnerships. Okay, all of you okay with this reason? Now, what are the types of PPP? What type of PPP models are generally involved? Before I start, please understand there are more than 20 types of PPPs. You do not have to buy out all the 20 types. If at all it is asked, 4 to 5 types of PPPs are more than sufficient. Let me explain one by one. Listen to me very carefully. First one is called as a build, operate, transfer. Second one is called as lease, develop, operate, LDO. Third one is called as a service contract. Fourth one is a hybrid annuity model. And the fifth one is engineering, procurement, construction. EPC, engineering, procurement, construction. Now, what is this? A build, operate, transfer. Let's take a very simple example. Imagine there is a need to construct a 500-kilometer stretch of national highway. Okay, 500-kilometer stretch of national highway. Government of India, Government of India, they will ask any private sector company wants to invest in this. A private sector company will come forward. They will invest money. They will construct the project. They will construct the project and they will operate means they will right ensure that maintenance is taken care of. They will ensure that tolls are operating. They will ensure repairs are done, etc. They will ensure all of it. And after, let's say, 20 years or after 30 years, they will simply hand over the project back to government and move out of this road infrastructure project. This type of a model is called as a build, operate and transfer model. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what is the advantage for a private sector company here? Why will the private sector's company spend so much amount of money to construct a road? Reason being, what if Government of India will allow you to collect the tolls and keep the tolls for the next 20 years? What if the government will allow you to collect the tolls and keep the tolls for the next 30 years? Right? So don't you think you're going to invest money, but by imposing and collecting tolls, you'll be able to generate lot of revenue, right, under the project. So such type of projects are referred to as build, operate, transfer. BOT, build, operate and transfer. Come to the fifth type. I'll discuss all the types, don't worry. Come to the fifth type. What happens in a fifth type? That is engineering, procurement and construction. Engineering, procurement and construction, EPC. In engineering, procurement and construction, I'll take the same example of a national highway. You are the government, I'm the private sector company. I will construct the road. I will construct the road, transfer the road to you. And for having developed the road, you will pay money to me. All of you okay with this? I'll repeat it again. In engineering, procurement and construction, I'll simply construct the road and hand over the road to you. You will operate the road, you will collect tolls, etc., etc. But because I have constructed the road, you will pay certain amount of money to me. That is called as engineering, procurement and construction. Now, please tell me, all of you are able to see the difference between first and fifth or not? Because some of you will simply say, sir, both 1 and 5 are one and the same. Both are same. Right? If you say same, then tell me how they are same. If you people are feeling that first and fifth are same, please tell me how do you think they are same? Because answer is, if you have listened to me very carefully, both are not same. In the first case, I will construct the road. I will keep the road with myself for next 20 years. I will collect money. And after 20 years, I will hand over the road to you. Right? This is called as a concessionaire period. The time period, concessionaire period for 20 years, for 30 years, etc. I will keep the road with myself. I will generate, I will collect lot of tolls. That is my revenue. But on the other side, in the fifth case, I will construct the road, transfer the road to you. You will collect the tolls. You will manage the road. You will pay money to me for having constructed the road. Right? So that is engineering, procurement, construction, EPC and BOT. Second, lease, develop, operate. LDO, lease, develop, operate. I'll give you a very simple example. Imagine there is an airport. You're the government. You have constructed the airport. Now you will tell me to operate airport for 30 years. You basically say, right, airport is already there. Please operate the airport. And for having operated the airport, give me certain amount of money. Right, annually, right, give me a certain amount of money. Please tell me, does it make sense to you? The infrastructure is already there. The example that I'm giving, infrastructure is already there. You are leasing out infrastructure. You're simply leasing out the infrastructure, asking me to provide services for complete infrastructure And because I'm generating revenue, I will share certain amount of revenue to you. And some of you are asking, sir, how the government will collect revenue? Please understand, from one project to another project, how the revenue will be generated will be different. There is no uniformity, and there should not be also. There is no uniformity. For example, in some of the project, government might simply say, annually, you'll have to give me 100 crores. All of you okay with this example? In some of these PPP project, the amount of fees can be fixed. Annually, give me 100 crores. And in some of the PPP project, government might simply say, whatever revenue you generate, how much ever revenue you generate, 2% of it, give it to me. How much ever revenue you generate, 5% of it, give it to me. Right? So the type of revenue model or the revenue sharing will differ from one type of project to another type of project. But you do not have to be worried about how revenue is discussed, how revenue is shared, will the government incur losses, etc., etc. You don't worry about it. You should understand the basics behind it. So first one is build, operate, transfer. Second one is right, basically lease, develop, operate, LDO. And the fifth one is EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction. Come to the third type, service contract. Service contract. Private sector player will provide some of the services. Underline the term. Private sector players will provide some of the services for a specific period of time. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by some of the services? For example, let's say railway is being operated, right? A metro train, whatever it is, right? So let's assume a metro train project is being operated. Can I say, if you travel in a metro, it is basically meaning you're consuming multiple services. Yes or no? If you're traveling in a metro, it's not a single service. It is a combination of multiple services. For example, AC is continuously running in a metro. All of you have observed it or not? AC is continuously operating. What about, right? Let's say metro ticketing. Somebody is going to provide tickets to you. Somebody is going to provide, right? Let's say security services to you. Somebody is going to provide cleaning services, right? So I hope you understand, when you travel in a railway, when you travel in a metro, when you travel in an airport, etc., it is not one service, it is a combination of multiple services. Now what if one of the service, just one of the services, let's say cleaning service, or let's say security services, is outsourced to a private sector by the government for 20 years? Yes or no? Right? Let's say a cleaning service or a security service, it is outsourced. It is given to a private sector for 20 years by the government. Is it not basically a concept of service contract? So some of the services will be provided by the private sector for certain number of years. What number of years? Again, there is no fixed formula for this. Somebody else will provide, not the government, but somebody else will provide services and they will be paid money for it. That is a service contract. Next one, hybrid annuity model. Fourth one is hybrid annuity model. In short, it is called as HAM model, hybrid annuity model. Now, what is this hybrid annuity model? Let me explain it. Listen to me very carefully. Hybrid annuity model, it is having a mixture of, that is, it is having features of the EPC model, right? Many of you will start asking me, what is EPC? Engineering, procurement, construction, and certain features of BOT model, build, operate, transfer. I'll repeat it. The hybrid annuity model or the HAM model is a combination of certain features of engineering, procurement, construction, and certain features of build, operate, transfer. Now, before I explain to you what is HAM, please remember what is EPC, what is BOT. In EPC, I will construct infrastructure, hand over the infrastructure to you, you will pay money to me, and I will not be involved in operations of infrastructure. Whereas in case of a build, operate, transfer, in case of build, operate, transfer in BOT model, I will construct the infrastructure, I will operate the infrastructure, I'll be involved in the operations of this infrastructure project. And after the time period, that is a concessionaire period is over, I will move out of the project. So for certain number of years, I'll be there in operations, maintenance, I will collect the tolls, etc., etc. And after that, I will move out of the project. Now, what is this hybrid annuity model? What is this HAM model? Hybrid annuity model. HAM model basically is following. Listen to me very carefully. The government of India, let's say they want to construct a particular road project. Okay, they want to construct one road project. Government of India says the private sector, I repeat, the private sector will have to invest 60% of the project cost. The private sector has to invest 60% of the project cost, and remaining 40% of the project cost will be given by government in the first 5 years. I will repeat it. Please listen carefully. Right? Listen carefully. 60% of the project cost has to be invested by the private sector. Remaining 40% of the project cost will be invested. Invested means given by the government in the first 5 years. So 40% will come from the government and 60% will have to be made by private sector. Now, once the road construction is over, I will not operate it. I am private and you are the government. Once I've constructed the road, I will not operate it. I will hand over the road project to you. I will hand over the road project to you. But I'll have to keep maintaining the road. Maintaining means any repairs, etc., etc. That is my responsibility. But because I've handed over the road to you, it is your responsibility. That is, it's the duty or the power of the government to collect tolls now. Can you see this point? Can you collect, I'm sorry, can once I've transferred the road project to you, who can collect tolls now? It will be the duty of the government. It will be the power of the government to collect a toll. So private sector will not collect. Government will have the right to collect. And who will maintain, right? That is maintenance of the roads. Who will take care of repairs of the roads? It will be done by private sector company which has developed the road, right? So please understand. Next point. Many of you ask me, sir, what is the advantage for a private sector? Why is the private sector entering into such project? What is in it for the private sector? Whatever investment I have done, whatever investment I have done, on this investment, government will provide returns. Whatever is the bank rate plus 3%, 3%, additional 3% rate of interest will be given to me by the government. So point number one, right? Point number one, please tell me, who is collecting tolls here? Is it the government collecting tolls or is it the private sector collecting tolls? Government is collecting tolls, right? Government has the power to collect tolls. Second, in case of this particular project, who is developing the project? Private sector is developing the project. Who is maintaining the road infrastructure? Private sector is maintaining the road infrastructure for, let's say, 20 years or 30 years as per the agreement. Now, please tell me, after looking at all these features, can I say you are able to see certain features of EPC as well as BOT? Let me know now. After looking at all the features of a hybrid annuity model, are you able to see certain features of engineering, procurement, construction, as well as build, operate, transfer? That is the reason I said HAM is a mixture of EPC as well as BOT. HAM is a mixture of EPC as well as BOT. Under this, a fixed payment is done for a period of time and then variable amount is paid for the remaining period. How much time period? You don't have to be worried. From one contract to another contract, the time period will keep on varying. But the 40%, 60% is fixed. Remember that 40% and 60% is fixed. 40% in first 5 years given by government, fixed. Remaining 60% by the private sector, that is also fixed. Now, what is the contract period? Right? That is the remaining period. After 5 years, what is the contract period? That will vary from one project to another project. So, for the remaining period, whatever 60% investment you have done, that will also be given back to you along with interest by the government. That is a model of hybrid annuity investments or ham model. This is very, very famous now. Lot of road infrastructure projects, I repeat, lot of road infrastructure projects are being developed under the ham itself. Done. Right now, many of you are asking, sir, is it important to remember the picture? My dear, no. If it is important, I will tell you. Every time you don't have to keep on asking me, is it important, is it important, this picture is important, that picture is important. If the picture is important, I will only tell you. In generally, if you see, at many points of time, I'll put a hashtag like this. If I put a hashtag in front of any picture, assume it is important. So if you ask me, sir, is this picture important for UPSC? No, this picture is not needed for UPSC exams. Okay, so this is the concept of hybrid annuity model. So there are different types. Okay, different types of the PPP models that government can use. And trust me when I say this, this is evolving. The types of models which are available, these are evolving over a period of time. It's not that only five are there and one of the five has to be used by the government. Absolutely no. There are more than 15, more than 20 types of models. And from one country to another country, what kind of model is used will change. From one authority to another authority, what kind of model they are allowed to use will also change. So you do not have to remember all the 20 plus types. Remember the 5 types, more than sufficient. Now, what are the problems with PPP? What are the issues in the PPP sector or PPP investment model? First one, very difficult to attract long-term investments in a country such as India. Let me know whether this is correct or not. Very difficult to attract long-term investments. Access to long-term investments is very difficult in India. Why? Please go back to banking chapter. Right? Please go back to banking discussion. Right? Did we discuss there's a problem with the bond market in India? Correct? There is a problem with the bond market, and bond markets are one of the markets where you can generate long-term money for investment purposes. What about banking structure? Most of the lot of investment financing comes from the banking sector, but the banking sector also faces the issue of asset liability mismatch, ALM. NBFCs are also lending for infrastructure development. They are also facing ALM. So I hope you remember all those particular points, right? It's basically a consolidation of what we have discussed in the last 20 classes. So attracting long-term investments or financing is a problem in India. Second one, existing contracts generally focus more on revenue capacity rather than quality of infrastructure, quality of services. I'll repeat it again. It's a basic idea. Right? And assume it is correct, by the way. That is, whenever the PPP agreements are signed, focus is always on revenue. Private sector will always focus on how much profit I can generate through this PPP model. Focus is not on quality of services. Focus is not on quality of infrastructure to be developed. Focus is always a revenue. Focus is always profit making. Third one, private developers, because these are long term projects, private developers will lose bargaining power over a period of time. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what is this issue of losing bargaining power? Let me give you a very simple current affairs example so that you understand it. All of you heard of rapid transport or rapid transit system which government of India is promoting now in some of the cities connecting Delhi. Let me see. Right, it was there in the current affairs, by the way. Right, rapid transit system. Okay, railway rapid transit system, RRTS, which is going to connect Delhi with multiple cities in neighboring states like this. Now, right, it's basically a railway connection. If you ask me, sir, what is the meaning of it? It's a railway connection. And many of you will say, but metro is there. Please understand, metros will operate in cities, within cities. but RRTS will connect multiple cities. That's a basic idea. RRTS will connect multiple cities with Delhi like this. That's the whole concept of RRTS. And moreover, the speed of RRTS is much higher than metro. For example, the metro which operates in Delhi, the highest speed or the average is somewhere around 100. Whereas RRTS is expected to run above 150, 160, 180 kilometers like this per hour. So I hope you understand. Let me take a very simple example here. Imagine, right? Step number one, imagine I'm a private sector, right? Me and you have entered into an agreement, PPP, to develop road infrastructure connecting two cities. Okay? Me and you have entered into an project where road infrastructure has to be developed to connect two cities, A and B. And this project is for 30 years. I'm supposed to invest a lot of money, develop the infrastructure, and collect the tolls for the next 30 years. Government will not give me any money. I will collect the toll. That is my revenue. And after 5 years is over, after 5 years, after 6 years of this project, right, yeah, the agreement is over, you will announce RRTS. You will announce RRTS connecting both same cities A and B. Connecting both of the cities A and B. A very simple question to you people. Tell me, because of RRTS, will I end up losing revenue or not? Think of it. Because of RRTS, will I end up losing revenue or not? Of course, yes. Yes or no? Of course, yes. I will end up losing revenue. For example, this Delhi Meerut stretch they are talking about. Delhi Meerut stretch, which they are talking about, normal trains are also there. The normal train takes somewhere around 1.5 hours, 2 hours, etc., to travel between these two cities, Delhi to Meerut. With railway rapid transit system, government itself says, I will reduce it to less than 1 hour. I will reduce this to less than 1 hour now under RRTS, which means obviously more and more. Again, I'm not saying everybody will shift. I'm not saying that. More and more customers, rather than taking the road method for travel or other railway network for traveling, if they start shifting to RRTS, right, automatically the vehicles on my national highway will come down. And when the vehicles will come down, the tolls that I was able to collect will also come down. So now please look at point number 3. Does it make sense to you? Look at point number 3, right? That is private developers, whenever they enter into these long-term projects, and these are long-term, mind you, they will not enter PPP for 3 months, 6 months. No, they will enter PPP for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. These are long-term projects. In essence, don't you think over a period of time, the policies of the government may affect how much revenue you will be able to collect? So in that particular situation, what if I say, think of next point as well. What if I say, I am the private sector and you had entered into a PPP with me for this road project, and your ask was, your condition was, annually I'll have to give you 100 crore rupee revenue. Annually I'll have to give you 100 crore rupee revenue. Now after 5 years you will start an RRTS. Don't you think it is correct to allow for renegotiations with the government because I'm losing revenues because of your project? Does it make sense or not? Is it not correct if I say, or is it correct or not? According to what should be done? Don't you think government should allow for renegotiations with the private sector so that whatever policies of the government is affecting the revenue, that will be considered now, and accordingly revenue model can be changed? So that is the third point. Private developers lose bargaining power in long-term projects. They will end up lose bargaining power in long-term projects. They should be provided a facility for, right, renegotiations. Land acquisition is a problem in India. Right? Again and again, we come across this issue of land acquisition. The best example I can provide you for issues with land acquisition is, have you heard of Silver Line project? Problem with the land acquisition. By the way, Silver Line was proposed in Kerala. Or let me take a current affairs example. Let me see. Current affairs example. How many of you came across the newspaper article where Tata company has won a case against Bengal government? Arbitration, by the way. Tata company, right? Those are wondering how Tata company is connected with Bengal government. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of Tata Nano. Tata Nano, initially the plant was supposed to be located in Bengal, West Bengal, by the way, right? So it was supposed to be located in Bengal, manufactured in Bengal, Singur. But the local residents, along with political party, opposed that project, opposed the project, right? They said the land has been acquired, we don't want to give, we do not want this to operate, etc., etc. Now the company was forced to shift its manufacturing facility from Singur, West Bengal, to Gujarat. It was forced to shift. What about their investments which has been already made in Singur then? Correct? What about their investment which is already made in Singur? Are they not going to incur losses? So there was a case regarding that. And very recently, the tribunal has ruled in favor of Tata company. It was there. It was there. Please check it. The tribunal has ruled in favor of Tata company, and the Bengal government is supposed to make payment to the Tata company now. So again, will UPC ask you Tata case? Will UPC ask you Singur case? Absolutely no. But I hope you understand when I'll keep on saying lot of issues are there in case of India whenever you want to acquire land for development of projects. Whenever you want to acquire land for the projects, lot of issues are there in India. Lot of issues. Okay. Next, issues related to government clearances. Government is supposed to provide clearances to me. I'm a private sector company because government is one of the party in the project. But what if Minister of Environment will not give me any approvals, will hold my approvals or cancel my license, etc. And all of those are also problems related to the public-private partnership. Private sector is not interested in investing in all the sectors. In fact, when I talk about road sector, which I believe will happen today itself, if you look at most of the infrastructure projects where PPP is allowed, I repeat, right? If you look at the infrastructure projects at the central government level where PPP is allowed, more than 50% of the projects, right? More than 50% of the projects in case of India are from the road sector itself. More than 50%, mind you, at the central government level, if you look at all the PPP projects, more than 50% are in road sector itself. Why? Reason is simple. Revenue potential in road infrastructure is very high. Revenue potential in road infrastructure is very, very high. That is the precise reason why lot of PPP projects have been implemented in the road segment. Next, NPAs in infrastructure projects are increasing, including the projects where PPP is being implemented. Right there also NPAs are becoming higher. And finally, there are a lot of delays in developing of the infrastructure projects. And when there is a delay, remember this, the cost of the project will also increase. I'll repeat the statement. Okay. Well, there have been lot of delays recent times. There have been lot of delays in developing of infrastructure projects, including PPP projects. And whenever there's a delay in the development of a project, construction of a project, the cost related to project will start increasing. Many of you ask me how is that associated? Very often in the newspapers you'll come across this. Government itself will give you an estimation, right? They will say there has been a delay by 19 months. There has been a delay by 24 months. As a result of this, cost has increased by so much. For example, I'll give a very simple example. Think of it. Imagine I am working for you. You're a company, infrastructure development company. I'm working for you. And we are in the process of implementing a particular road project. And because of certain issues, certain raw material has not reached us. Certain raw material has not reached us. Now, because the raw material has not reached, there is a delay in the implementation of the project. Agreed. There is a delay. But more than that, if the raw material was available, we could have completed the project in 1 month. But because of delay, it will, let's say, take 3 months now. So don't you think Rather than paying salary to me or wages to me for 1 month, because of the delay, you will pay salary or wages for 3 months to me. Yes or no? Right? You will have to pay salaries or wages for 3 months now, not for 1 month, because you have hired me. And as a result of this, don't you think the cost of the project will automatically start increasing? Cost of project will automatically start increasing. Yes, that will happen. That tends to happen. And again, trust me, I've just given you a very simple example. Is it the only reason why the cost of the project will increase? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. What if, I'll just give you one more example. You are supposed to construct a road project like this. Okay, road like this. But the government now, or let's say the Supreme Court now says, this particular stretch, it is crossing through ecologically sensitive region. Ecologically sensitive region. So I will not allow you to construct the road in this phase. You will have to change the design now. You'll have to change the design. That is, let's say, you will have to take a D route like this. You'll have to change the design and develop a project like this. Now, please tell me, because of this, will my land acquisition cost increase or not? Will the length of the road change? Which means I'll have to construct more length of the road network now. What if government says or the Supreme Court says, no, don't change the route like this. Rather than going right on the ground, at this particular stretch, go underground. And this is happening, by the way. At this particular stretch, do not go on the ground like this. Here, create an underground right road so that you will not going to disturb this kind of ecologically sensitive region. Can I give you one example? Can I give one example? This is exactly what has happened. Bullet train project. Check it, by the way. Bullet train project. Very recently, such a judgment has been provided. Very recently, such a judgment has been provided where the bullet train project, the route has to be changed now. Route in the sense, rather than running on the ground at a particular stretch, the bullet train has to go underground now. And when rather than constructing a project on the ground, now you're forced to construct the project underground, what will happen to cost of project? That's common sense. Okay, what will happen to the cost of the project? Cost of the project automatically will rise up, right? It will increase a lot. So there are various issues, right? As a result of which there is a delay in the development of project, and there is also right rise in the cost of the project. Can I give you one more example? You imagine you're importing from China the raw material. You're importing raw material from China, and government of India says, I will impose a very high amount of tariff, that is taxes, when you're importing from any of the neighboring countries. Right? What do you think will happen to your cost of input? What will happen to the cost of raw material, cost of the project, right, etc., etc. Again, there are so many examples that you can think of. Do not do a PhD only on this, right? Do not waste your time. But fact is simple. More delays means more payment. More payment means cost of the project will increase. Okay. Now, how do you address these kind of issues? What can be done to address these kind of issues? There was one committee which was set up by the government, Vijay Kelkar Committee. Okay, Vijay Kelkar Committee. And there are a lot of recommendations given by the Vijay Kelkar Committee. Let's go one by one. Point number one. The state agencies should not be allowed to participate in the PPP. State agencies. The state agencies should not be allowed to participate in the PPP. Now, slightly tricky, listen to me very carefully. Point number one, can I say PPP means one party should be the government and another party should be private sector? Yes or no? Please think of it. Traditional concept. Okay, traditional definition. PPP means public private partnership, which means government and private sector both will come together. That is PPP. Point number two, there are various agencies, authorities which are set up by the state government. I repeat, there are various agencies or authorities set up by the state government which will enter into PPP infrastructure project agreement with central government. With the central government. I'll repeat the statement. Listen carefully. There are various state government agencies. For example, many states have it. Kerala, Karnataka, many state governments, Gujarat also. So there are many state governments where they have set up authorities which will enter into public-private partnership with the central government agency. Now, this is the kind of PPP that we are entering into. Now, look at the first one and second one. Please tell me, is the second one, is it strictly from a traditional concept? Is it strictly a public-private partnership? Think of it. Is the second one strictly is it adhering to the concept of one private agency and government agency entering into PPP? No, that's a fact, by the way. That's a fact, and it's very common. It's very common in India. Point number three: what is the role of the state government through the state government agencies? What do you think is the role of the government? Is the role of the government running behind profits, or is the role of the government providing welfare to the people? I hope you understand. What is the role of the government? Is it to provide welfare to the people, service goods to the people, looking after the good of the people, or running behind profits? Right? Don't you think it is providing welfare to the people? Now, please compare point number 2 and 3. On one side, you agree to the fact that role of the government, let's say state government, should be to provide welfare to the people and not run behind profits. But on the other side, if you look at the point number 2, state government agencies, that is entities owned by the state government, are involved in the PPP with the central government, which is nothing but running behind profits. Don't you think it is a conflict of interest here? Don't you think the state government, rather than taking care of the people, is more focused on earning profits? Yes or no? Does it make sense to you? On one side, state government should focus on welfare, but on the other side, state government is running behind profit. And don't you think at one point of time we might arrive at a situation where state government will forget about welfare of the people, minimize welfare of the people, and think about only generating revenues? Run behind more and more operations to generate revenues rather than taking care of welfare of the people. That is the precise reason Vijay Kelkar committee says whenever you are allowing right parties to enter into PPP with the central government, state agency should not be allowed. State agency should not be allowed to participate. Only private sector should be allowed to participate. Okay, so that is the first important recommendation. Second very important recommendation: whenever you're talking about any project, infrastructure project, there is always a risk involved in development of the project. There is always a risk. Sir, what kind of a risk are you talking about? For example, imagine you take a loan to develop road infrastructure. What if the rate of interest on the loan is increased because repo rate is increased after 2 years, after 3 years, after 4 years, like this? Right? Is that not a risk for you? Think of it. You want to develop a road infrastructure project, there is one more wave of the pandemic. Getting access to labor will be very risky for you. You are constructing road, and imagine there is an earthquake, there are floods. Is it not risk associated with the project? Of course, yes. So again, the point I'm trying to make is simple here. Whatever infrastructure project you are involved in, there is always a risk involved. The risk associated with getting access to labor, right? Interest rate risk, import risk, exchange rate risk. What about traffic risk? For example, imagine you have given me the right to construct a road, collected tolls for 30 years. And if the traffic does not come on the road, will I be able to earn my revenue? Will I be able to even recover my investments? Very few vehicles are there on the road, right? Because most of them have shifted to, let's say, civil aviation, or waterways is there, or RRTS is there, Vande Bharat is there. So I hope you understand there are so many risks. Generally, whenever you talk about PPP, all the risk associated with project will be handed over to private sector. The private sector will face all the risk. What this committee says is no, the private sector should not be facing all the risk. The risk should be distributed between the government as well as the private sector. Whenever you talk about the risk allocation, there should be distribution between the government also, the private sector also. That is guidelines for risk allocation. Next one, PPP framework. Right now, we do not have any national level policy for PPP. We do not have a national level policy for PPP. This committee stated that we should have, by the central government, one policy for public-private partnership, one policy for the whole of India. Next, Swiss challenge model should not be promoted. I'll come back to this, don't worry. Swiss challenge model should not be promoted. In fact, it is there at multiple state level, let's say PPP projects, central government also it is there. Across the globe, many countries promote Swiss challenge model. Why it should not be promoted? I will tell you, just have patience. Next, we should protect the bargaining power of the private sector companies. Reason being, these PPP projects are very long-term projects. And over a period of time, because of various policies of the government, internal factors, external factors, there will be impact on the revenue potential of the private sector company. So we should protect the bargaining power of bargaining means negotiations. We should provide certain power to the private sector to negotiate with the government over a period of time of the project. Next, we should also have sector specific regulators, right? Let me start with a very simple example. Please tell me, do we have a regulator for the stock market? Yes or no? Do we have a regulator for the stock market? Yes. Do we have a regulator for insurance market? Yes, there is a regulator. Do we have a regulator for banking sector? Yes, there is a regulator. So argument is simple. There is a need for having regulators in all the sectors like this, especially those sectors where we are promoting PPP. Reason being, whenever regulators are present, they will ensure that all the participants in the sector will follow guidelines. Every participant in the sector will be following whatever policies of the government are there. That is the role of the regulator. So what this committee recommended was, in every sector that is involved where PPP is being implemented, we should have regulators. For example, let me check how many of you know. Please tell me, do we have a regulator for real estate in India? Let me see. Do we have a regulator for real estate in India? There is a regulator, by the way. And why I'm asking you that question is important. This regulator comes into discussion multiple times in the newspapers. RERA, Real Estate Regulatory Agency. RERA. RERA is very, very important. Why? Earlier, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was no regulator for real estate. Who is launching which project? Nobody to keep a track. Whether they are promising and delivering the same project to you, nobody to keep a track. How much money they are collecting, how they are utilizing it, nobody was there to regulate it. But now we have a regulatory authority, RERA, and because there is a RERA authority, now if you have seen any project which is launched in real estate, they will have to give you a registration number. They will say this project is RERA approved. If you don't trust me, when you're reading the newspaper, check for this. They will write RERA approved project. Let's say there is a company which is launching a housing project at the one or the other corner or in the center only, they'll put RERA approved project, which is a regulatory agency now. So in the same way, we should have sector specific regulators. Next, we should have guidelines for auditing account books of the private sector. Why? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine there is one airport, and right, I have been given the duty of operating the airport. collecting revenue for 30 years. Okay, the lease period is 30 years. And you have told me, you are the government by the way, you have told me whatever revenue you generate, 10% of the revenue you will have to give to government. 10% of the revenue that you have generated, you will have to give it to the government. That is the agreement. Now, let's say next year, after 1 year, I will give you 100 rupees. Okay, after 1 year is over, you are the government, I'll give you 100 rupees. Simple question. How will you come to know whether this 100 rupee revenue that I've given to you is the right amount of revenue or not? Let me know. Right? What is your approach to find out the 100 rupee that you have received? It is a correct amount. I've not cheated you. How will you come to know that? Don't you think if you want to know whether this 100 rupee is 10% of my revenue or not, you'll have to look into my account books? Yes or no? You'll have to you'll have to look into my account books. That is my revenue. That is my statements. How much is my expenditure? How much is my revenue? How much is my profit? You should get access to all of it. But please understand, I'm a private sector company. You are the government. Please tell me, as per the law, are you allowed to audit my account books? Think of it. As per the law, are you allowed to audit my account books? No. You are not allowed entry into my account books. Right? What I will do is, I will appoint an auditor. I will appoint an auditor, and this auditor will basically give me a clean sheet, say that, okay, these are the revenues, please take it. That is what auditor will do. Auditor is looking into all my details and is saying whatever company is saying, it is correct. That is the role of the auditor. In fact, many of you will see that, okay, sir, there is a government auditor by the name of CAG. Right, under article of Constitution of India, there is an auditor, Comptroller Auditor General. But please remember this, CAG does not have the right to audit account books of the private sector. CAG, right, CAG does not have the right to start looking into private sector accounts. CAG is allowed to look into only the government books. Right, so argument is simple here. At the end of the day, I am giving you 100. How will you come to know this 100 rupees is 10% of my revenue? That you will come to know only when you will have the right to audit account books of the private sector. So whenever the private sector entities are present in the PPP, government should frame guidelines wherein they should have the right to enter or audit the account books of the private sector. Otherwise, government will find it very difficult to find out whether the revenue shared with the government, whether this is correct or not correct. Okay, done? Right, so these are recommendations. These are recommendations, right? So I'm not saying these have been implemented. These are simply recommendations. Now, what is the Swiss challenge model? There is one recommendation saying that do not promote Swiss challenge model. What is this Swiss challenge model? Let me explain it. Right, generally, understand this carefully. Once you understand, it's very easy. Generally, what is the process? Generally, the government will announce a project. Government will announce a project, and the private sector will take proposals to the government after the announcement is done. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Generally, what happens? Let's say government of India will announce, in this region, I want to construct airport. There is this city, in this region, I want to construct airport. Now, private sector will do their own survey. They will create proposals and they will take the proposals to the government after the project has been announced. This is generally how the process works out. But under the Swiss challenge model, here is the government has not announced anything. Government has not made any announcement. Private sector will approach government with a proposal. Don't say both are one and the same. Please look at it. Right? In case of Swiss challenge model, government has not announced anything. Government has not even considered any project. Private sector will create a project, take a proposal, approach the government, submit the proposal. Right? This is a concept of unsolicited bidding. What do you mean by unsolicited? One is solicit and another one is unsolicit. English now. Right, I'll stop teaching economics, enter into reading comprehension. Solicit and unsolicit. What do you mean by solicit? Solicit means somebody is requesting. That is called as solicit. On the other side, unsolicit. Unsolicit means nobody is requesting. You are only approaching. Right? Let me know. Have you people come across the term solicit in wedding cards or not? Let me know. Have you people seen the term solicit in the wedding card invitations? Wedding card invitations. In fact, the first line will be we solicit. We solicit. We solicit means we request you to be present on this particular right occasion, etc. So again, even if you have not read, don't worry. Don't worry. UPSC is not going to ask you, have you come across wedding card invitations or not? Tell me how it is managed, etc. etc. Don't worry. UPSC will not ask you. Just to make you understand easily. Whatever examples I give you, right, going away from economics is just to make you understand easily. That's it. For example, now tell me, next time if you come across ETF, let me know, will everybody get this particular picture in your brain or not? Let me know. Next time when you come across ETF, will everybody think of GEMS packet or not? And why? It's a visual medium. It's easier to remember. It's easier. That is, it's a group. It's a collection which you cannot break, etc., etc. And whenever you come across the term bond, trust me when I say this, you'll remember this. When you'll come across the term bond in any context, you'll remember this, right? Suddenly you'll remember, that fellow used to show me one play card, one cardboard used to show me, right? Years was mentioned, rate of interest was mentioned. Simple, reason is simple. It is easier to remember pictures. Okay, that's a reason. That's a reason, right? I'll keep on right showing you bottle. I'll show you jumps packet. I'll show you this, etc. What is the reason? It is easier for you to remember. I remember. I know that I can remember easily, but for you it is easier to remember. Okay, come back to this. Come back to this. So in Swiss challenge model, can I say government is not requesting any proposal, but private sector is coming forward with a proposal. Whereas generally, government will request proposals and then private sector will come up with a proposal. Now, why does this committee say? Why does this committee say, right, government should not promote Swiss challenge model? Reason being, please tell me if this kind of a proposal, right, is done, or if this kind of things are happening in the government, will there be transparency in the system? Think of it. Will there be transparency in the system? Don't you think there will be opaqueness in the system? Opaqueness means no transparency, by the way. Opaque is exactly opposite to transparent. So if a private sector will come out with a proposal, and some of you will ask me, sir, why there is no transparency? I'll tell you now. Private sector will come out with a proposal, approach government, give a proposal to government. Government should not accept it. Government should not accept it. Why? If government will simply accept it, that basically means government is not giving chance to anybody else. Now have a look at this. Government will say, okay, and imagine this is your proposal, and imagine this is your file. I will say, okay, I will accept the proposal, but I will not allocate the project to you. I will have to give a chance to private sector companies also. What if, just think of it, I will ask the private sector companies, I will ask everybody else in the market, such company has submitted a proposal to me. You also want to give a proposal? Give it in next 7 days. Now, what if 7 days are not possible for private sector companies to properly study and come out with a proposal? Possible or not? Possible or not? What if they will give you 30 days? The government will give 30 days. But even in 30 days, private sector says, I don't know what to provide in a proposal. I don't know what other company has done. I don't know what is the pricing of other company. So in that case, how do I give a proposal to the government? So I hope you understand. And have these instances have such instances happened in the government? Of course, yes. Again, I don't want to malign anyone. I don't want to make it political. Such instances happen generally in case of the state governments also, central government also. Generally, these kind of models are used whenever the governments are in favor of one company. They want that company to get the project, right? So again, don't worry about it. So I hope you understand why Kelkar committee is opposed to promotion of Swiss challenge model, at least now, right? So what is Swiss challenge model? It is a way to award project based on unsolicited proposals, right? It is a way to award projects. The government enters into negotiations with a player who will submit a proposal. If the negotiations fail, then the government may call bids for from various other interested parties, right? And in another variant, the government may call for proposals and will give the right of refusal to the ideator of the proposal. Ideator means the one who has created the proposal. Okay, many countries across the world, right, actually have implemented Swiss challenge model. But this committee says, if there is a if there is very high transparency in the governance system, I'll repeat the statement. If there is very high transparency in the governance system, it is better to adopt a Swiss challenge model. But that is not generally the feature associated with the governments in India. That's a reason. Do not promote Swiss challenge model. That can lead to a lot of corruption in the system. That will make a system much more opaque. No transparency will be available. So these are some of the recommendations of, right, the Kelkar committee, Vijay Kelkar committee. Okay. Now, finally, one more concept associated with PPP: viability gap funding, VGF, viability gap funding. Now, if you observe it at the top of this, I put a hashtag. I put a hashtag. Why? Very recently, the term viability gap funding was there in the newspaper, and those are worried. Some of you, in fact, asked about it. You asked about it to me in the beginning of the class. Sir, what about articles? Last week we did not receive any articles. Please do not worry. Tomorrow I'll give you a whole bunch of articles. Do not worry. Tomorrow I'll give you a list of articles where you will see VGF was there in the newspaper in the last week itself. Now, what is the concept of VGF? VGF simply stands for viability gap funding. Viability gap funding. Now, what is this viability gap funding? Let me explain it. Imagine there is a particular project, right? Let's say 500-kilometer stretch of national highway. This is a project, 500-kilometer stretch of national highway. Point number one, you are the government, I am the private sector. You are the government, I am the private sector. Please tell me, for government, will the government not be happy with the construction of these types of infrastructure projects? In simple terms, will the government favor private sector investment, more and more investment into such projects or not? Answer is yes. Government will be very happy. Government favors these kinds of investments. Why? Government is not investing, private sector is investing. Okay. Second, if private sector is investing, can this lead to higher demand for raw materials in the market? Can this generate certain employment? Can this make it easier for transportation of raw materials in the Indian economy? Of course, yes. So there are multiple economic reasons. There are multiple economic reasons why government will favor such type of projects. Economically, it makes perfect sense for you. Economically, should this project should be developed. But I'm a private sector. Don't you think for private sector, financial viability will be the biggest concern? Financial viability means I'm investing 500 crore. Will I be able to generate revenue or not? If yes, how much revenue will I generate? Will that be sufficient? What if I take 500 crore, invest in bond market? What if I can generate more revenues in the bond market compared to this project? So I hope you understand the problem here. For government, this makes perfect sense. Economically, the project should be done. But financially, the one who is going to invest in the project, they are worried, they are concerned about how much revenue, what revenue potential is there in the project. If I'm going to invest 500 crore, am I going to generate sufficient amount of revenues? Am I not taking a higher risk by investing in this project? That is a concern for the private sector. So what will the government do? Government, in order to ensure that private sector will not invest all the amount, government will provide part of the project cost. I'll repeat. In order to reduce the pressure on the private sector, in order to reduce the risk that the private sector is taking, government will provide, not loan. Government is giving money, certain amount, a certain percentage of the cost of the project, government will give to private sector. For example, have a look at this. Under PPP, that is for promotion of PPP project, there is a program launched by the government, that is a VGF scheme for PPP projects, which is being extended to be implemented till 24 and 25. It was launched back in the year 2006. Last year it was supposed to end, but the government of India has extended this. It has extended this till 24 and 25. Under this, certain projects are classified under scheme 1, where 60% of the cost of the project will be given by government. I repeat, under this, certain projects are classified as a scheme 1 or under scheme 1, where 60% of the cost of the project is given by the government. That is, let's say, same example, national highway. If it is part of the scheme 1 and the cost of the project is, let's say, I'll take an arbitrary number, let's say, right, 700 crore rupees. 700 crore rupees. 60% of the cost of the project will be given by the government to me. Now, please tell me, out of 700, if I can get 420 crores from the government, is it reducing risk of investment for me or not? Let me know. Is it not reducing the risk of investment? Yes, it is reducing. And second, if my investment will reduce from 700 crore to 280 crore, don't you think the project will become more financially viable for me? Right? Don't you think the project will become more viable for me? It makes more sense for me to invest 280 crore rather than investing 700 crore. That is the objective. That is the objective of viability gap funding. Viability gap funding. What do you mean by viability gap funding? There are certain projects which should be, understand this, which should be developed economically. Economically, they are justified because the raw material demand increases, employment increases, etc. etc. Economically, these projects are justified, but there are concerns over financial viability of the project. How much revenue the project will generate compared to my investment. In case of such projects, certain part of the cost, certain percentage of the project cost will be given by the government. Money will be given by the government, not a loan. Grants are given by the government. And that particular process is called as viability gap funding. Viability gap funding. And there is one more scheme under this. If your project will fall under the scheme 2, then the government will provide 80% of your total capital expenditure. 80% of your total capital expenditure will be paid by the government. And when I say 60% or 80%, please remember, generally half of it will come from the center, and remaining half can come from a ministry, or can come from the state government, or any government agency that is responsible for implementation of the project. Right? This proposal or this kind of an initiative is called as viability gap funding. Is it okay? Is it okay? Anybody has a problem with this? Please do let me know. Otherwise, I'll go forward. Will government have revenue share in VGF? No, government doesn't get any kind of revenue share. Government basically will provide this so that the project will be implemented. Right? Let me connect it to current affairs. I'll give you the article tomorrow. Read it. Have you heard of ISA? Let me know. Have you heard of ISA? Those are asking, right? What is this? Where it is there in the current affairs? ISA, International Solar Alliance. In case of International Solar Alliance, the ISA has increased VGF. I'll give you the article tomorrow. Please read that. In ISA, the VGF component very recently has been increased for the development of solar projects, right? And they are expecting that because of this increased VGF, they'll be able to attract a lot of investments in the solar energy development, especially in African countries. Right, so very recently it was there in the newspapers. Again, generally the term is VGF, that is part of the project cost. Simple. Those are asking what is this VGF, very difficult, etc., etc. Part of the cost of the project will be given by the government. Simple, certain percentage will be given by the government. Why is the government giving this money? The government wants private sector to invest. That's a fact. Second, because the private sector is worried about the financial viability of the project. That is, my investment is this much. How much will be my revenue? Financial viability. Because the private sector is more focused on the financial viability, the government wants to promote the viability of the project, hence will provide certain percentage of the cost of the project under VGF. That is called as viability gap funding. And a special program only for PPP has been launched by the government, that is VGF for PPP. Right, so this is the discussion regarding the PPPs, right, as well as the other investment models. We are done with investment models. Can we go forward now? Questions are left out from industries also. Questions are there on investment models also. We'll discuss today. Do not worry. We'll discuss questions on both of them, industries as well as investment models today. Can I go forward now? Anybody has a problem? Can I go forward? Sir, when will you give a break? My dear, I'll give you a break. Don't worry. Right? Let's cover some more, and maybe by around 7 o'clock, I'll give you a break. Okay. Next part I'll be covering will be infrastructure. Next part I'll be covering will be the idea of infrastructure. Point number one, if I were to ask you, what is infrastructure, many of you will give me examples of infrastructure. I know many of you will give me examples of infrastructure. If I come to your home now, imagine just like that, आपके toothpaste में नमक है, and with that particular ad, imagine suddenly I'll come into your home with a mic and ask you, give me example of infrastructure. I'm sorry, tell me infrastructure. What is infrastructure? And most of you say, sir, infrastructure means roads, infrastructure means ports, airports. Those are examples. Those are examples. Perfectly correct. I'm not saying it is wrong, perfectly correct. What is infrastructure? But infrastructure are those assets which are created, which are developed, which will help us either in promotion of economic growth or social welfare. Simple. These are supporting, right? These are going to provide supporting services for the growth and the development. For example, please tell me, right, a road infrastructure, don't you think the roads such as national highways will support growth in India? What about the port infrastructure? Port infrastructure will provide supporting services for achieving growth, GDP of 5 trillion, 10 trillion, whatever it is. What about sanitation infrastructure? What about healthcare infrastructure, education infrastructure? Right, so either these will help us in providing welfare or development, achieving development in the economy, or promoting growth in the economy. So generally that is the concept of infrastructure. And understand this, in a traditional sense, generally infrastructure was divided into two parts. Traditional sense, infrastructure was divided into two parts. One, they call it as a physical infrastructure. One, they will refer to this as physical infrastructure. Second one is social infrastructure. Example for physical infrastructure, right? Let's say office spaces, office buildings, national highways, airports, ports, etc. Right? Those are physical infrastructure. Right? I'm sorry, not physical, economic infrastructure. My mistake, not physical, economic infrastructure. Right? Examples remain same. Ports, airports, office buildings, national highways, economic corridors, right, etc. These are economic infrastructure. What about social infrastructure? Schools, hospitals, right? These are examples of social infrastructure. Traditionally, this was the division. I'll repeat, traditionally, these are the divisions. But of recently, there is one more division. Please remember, this is called as a digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure. And in case of India, there is a lot of discussion regarding digital infrastructure. Please be very, very careful. For example, many of you ask me, sir, what do you mean by digital infrastructure? Can I say UPI is a digital infrastructure? Think of it. Aadhaar is a digital infrastructure, correct? UPI, Aadhaar, these are nothing but examples of digital infrastructure, right? In fact, in case of India, there is a lot of discussion regarding digital infrastructure. Please be very, very careful. Please be very careful. Why? India is providing this UPI technology to many other countries, correct? Right? India is providing this technology of UPI to many other countries. Suddenly, UPSC can ask you, what is the role of India in promotion of digital infrastructure in the global market? Many of you will keep on thinking, what is the UPSC talking about? What is this digital infrastructure? Or else, can I ask you one more question? I'm just giving you questions as it right clicks in my mind. Discuss the role of digital infrastructure in promotion of financial inclusion in India. Yes or no? I'll repeat the statement. Discuss the role of digital infrastructure in promotion of financial inclusion in India. But suddenly UPSC can throw the question like this. Many of you will keep on wondering, what is the question trying to test? What is the UPSC asking? What is this digital infrastructure? What is this financial inclusion? How both are connected, etc., etc. So I hope you understand there is a third type of infrastructure, very famous. India is becoming famous globally because of this infrastructure now. That is a digital infrastructure such as UPI as well as Aadhaar. Right. So infrastructure in a nutshell, I'll repeat it. It is right. It's basically it will provide supporting services to achieve growth objectives and development objectives. And some of you are trying to find out whether this is purely an economic infrastructure, whether this is purely a social infrastructure, etc. My dear, please understand, generally, in many of these cases, there is an overlap. In many of these cases, there is an overlap, right? So do not try to have watertight compartmentalization. Do not assume that this will always be only social infrastructure. No. This will always be only economic infrastructure. Not necessarily. Some will fall under both of them. We'll have components of both of them. Okay, so do not try to have watertight compartmentalization. Now, with relation to infrastructure, what type of infrastructure we'll be discussing in the classroom? We'll discuss power sector, we'll discuss railways, roads, ports, as well as airports. And while I'm discussing the ports, we'll also discuss the concept of inland waterways. Inland waterways. Right? Very recently, in the current affairs, I'll connect it to current affairs. Automatically, you will only say, yes, sir, this was there in the newspapers, by the way. Okay, let's start there. And whatever I'm going to discuss, please understand, lot of it will be current affairs. Most of it will be current affairs. Because do not expect UPSC to ask you, in your state, how many, right, let's say, municipal roads are there. I hope you understand. They might ask you a very important national highway that might run into your state, right? Maybe in interview. But do not expect UPSC to ask you, tell me how many rural roads are there in your state. How many municipal roads are there in your state? Tell me that data. Right? No, do not waste your time. How many railway lines are there? Right? How many railways are there? How many bogies are there in a railway? Right? Which railway is longest? Which railway has right a number of highest passengers? I don't expect UPSC to ask you questions on these lines. Again, right? In a very rare cases, just to make it right very difficult, they might ask you, but there will be a current affairs connection to that always. Very, very current affairs connection will be there. For example, please tell me, looking at what has been happening in case of railways, is there a potential of asking a question on Kavach system next year in the prelims? Let me see how many of you are reading newspapers. Based on what is happening in the railways, is there a potential of question on Kavach next, either in the prelims or in the mains exams? Of course, yes. And very recently, a train accident, railway accident happened in one of the states in southern India. Two others earlier happened in some of the states in northern India. And in all these cases, one common factor of technology that was discussed was Kavach system. So suddenly UPSC can pick up a question on that. So that is where you will have to be very careful with UPSC. Okay, done. So let me start with power sector now. Let me start with power sector. Okay. Now, what is this power sector? Basically, I'm talking about electricity. In case of India, please remember, when you are talking about electricity, there are three stages. There are three stages. One is a production of electricity. Second one is a transfer. Transfer is nothing but transmission. Transmission means a transfer. So transmission of electricity. And the third one is distribution of electricity. Distribution of electricity. So I'll repeat it again. In electricity, there are three segments, three stages. One is a generation, that is production. Second one is a transfer of electricity, because I hope you understand. Imagine electricity is produced at a power plant. That electricity has to be transferred to every state like this. It has to be transferred to every district like this. So second one is a transmission. Transmission means a transfer or transportation. Third one is the distribution of electricity. Now, come to the points here. In case of generation of electricity, private sector is present, government is also present. Private sector entities are there in the generation, as well as the state governments, as well as central government. At the state government, many agencies are owned by the state governments, which will generate electricity, produce electricity. Central government also has a many agencies, many companies which is involved in production of electricity. And private sector, best example is Tata Power. Have you heard of Tata company? Tata Power. Suzlon Energy is there, and that is wind energy. Reliance Power is there. Adani Power is there. So private sector companies are also present in the generation, production of electricity in India. Point number two, whenever you talk about production of electricity, remember this, more than 50% of the production of electricity in India is done in thermal. That is basically, if you talk about electricity, we will have a division called as thermal, right? We will have a wind energy, we will have solar energy, we will also have a right hydroelectric energy. So most of the electricity, that is more than 50% of the electricity production in case of India, comes from thermal sources itself. That is basically burning of coal. We will burn a lot of coal in India, and that is a precise reason. Let me connect it to current affairs now. Let me connect it to current affairs. All of you are reading about what is the pollution level in Delhi. Yes or no? All of you are reading about what is the pollution level in Delhi now. Earlier, one of the causes, I'm saying one of the causes, there are multiple causes. One of the causes of very high pollution in Delhi was the power plants which were present surrounding Delhi. I'll repeat the statement. Earlier, one of the reasons, again, one of the reasons, I'm not saying the only reason, the burning of stubble in Punjab and Haryana is also a reason. I hope you understand. Now, Diwali is coming. Firecrackers will also become one of the prominent reasons. So, earlier, one of the reasons what caused very high pollution in Delhi was basically the coal power plants. Coal power plants, which are burning a lot of coal to generate electricity. So more than 50% of the electricity in India comes from the coal sector, that is the thermal power sector. And remaining, right, will come from hydroelectricity, that is using water flow, as well as the renewable energy, such as the wind energy, solar energy, etc. Now, because the coal sector has so many concerns, right? One, we are dependent on the coal import. I hope you know in geography you'll come across this coal reserves in India, etc., etc. So we are heavily dependent on import of coal. That is one problem. Second problem is when you burn coal like this, these are very old plants. The emissions are very very high. Highly polluting plants are present in India. That is also cause of concern. That is the precise reason government of India has been targeting more and more electricity production from non-fossil fuels, not from fossil fuels such as coal, from the non-fossil fuel such as wind energy, right? Or let's say the solar energy, etc., etc. So that is a basic idea here. So that is one more point. Third point is all these generation companies are collectively referred to as Jankos. These are generally referred to as Jankos. Right? Jankos basically is a combination of two terms, generation companies. Do not be confused when you come across the term Jankos in the newspaper. Generation companies, there are two terms. We will club both of the terms. We will call it as only one term, Jankos. So point number one, that is first step, generation. And once a generation is done, once the electricity is produced, the electricity will be transmitted across the states, across the districts, right, and will be supplied to distribution companies. And in case of transmission, we have a government agency such as Power Grid. Apart from that, we also have various private sector agencies which are or private sector companies which are involved in the transmission of electricity. And once the electricity is transmitted, it will reach the lowest level, that is the distribution stage. In case of distribution, please remember this, the distribution is done by the state governments mainly. It is mainly done by the state governments, but apart from the state government, there are also private sector companies which are involved in the distribution of electricity. For example, private sector companies such as Tata Power, Reliance Power, Adani Power, etc. If somebody is from Maharashtra, right, specifically from let's say Mumbai, these are very very famous names for them, right? So these are the private sector companies which are involved in the distribution of electricity, distribution of electricity. But apart from that, please remember most of the distribution is controlled. It is done by the state governments itself. These distribution companies will be referred to as discoms. These distribution companies will be referred to as discoms, or distribution plus companies, or discoms. So everybody is okay with the production and supply chain in India, right? One is production, then there's a transmission, then there's a distribution. In production, government plus private sector. Transmission, again government is there but private sector also does it. And distribution, state government plus private sector, right? The state governments will have their own distribution companies, and the private sector also is involved as a distribution companies. This is basically certain important static points regarding the power sector in India. Now let me enter into a dynamic aspect of this. What are the problems? What are the concerns? What are the issues? What are the issues here? Let's go point by point. First one, high aggregate technical and commercial losses. Listen to me very carefully. Let me cover the point number one, then we can take a break. High aggregate technical and commercial losses, AT and C losses. Now, what do you mean by AT and C losses? Let's start. The government, right? Let's say the government through distribution companies, state governments I'm talking about, will provide electricity for consumers. Now, will you not come across a situations of power theft? Let me know. Have you come across situations of power theft? And if you are wondering, sir, what do you mean by power theft? If you have been, right, let's say to certain places in India, let's say villages, if a electricity wire is crossing, right, if a electricity wire is going above your house like this, they'll simply take wires, put it on electricity wires, directly take electricity into the home. And this is a fact, by the way. I'm not simply making it up, right? You can check it, right? There is a lot of power theft. One way the people will steal electricity. Power theft is stealing of electricity. They will basically, right, take two wires, put it on the wire, electricity wire, which is crossing their home or passing by their home, and draw the electricity directly into the home. And if somebody, a government official will come, all of them, they will take up those wires, keep it down like this. That's it. Right now, right? Does it happen in India? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. In lot of places, the power theft is a common norm. It happens, which means government on one side will supply electricity to you, but on the other side, they are not able to collect bills from you. They are not able to collect money from you. Right? Is it not a loss for the government? Is it not a loss? Of course, yes. On the other side, electricity is transferred, electricity is transmitted, electricity is distributed through wiring. Some of the electricity in the process of transmission, in the process of distribution like this, some of the electricity will be lost in the form of heat, right? Laws of thermodynamics. Some of this electricity will be lost in the form of heat, right? So that is also a loss for the government. So I hope you understand there are multiple situations where the government will supply electricity. You will basically close, lock your home, run away, or shift to another city without paying electricity bills, right? You will delay making a payment of electricity bills by 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, etc. Right? You will steal electricity. Again, when I say you, do not take it personally. Don't say, sir, how can you accuse me? Right? You don't know about me, etc. I'm just generalizing it. So because of all of these factors, government on one side, through the distribution companies, of course, will supply electricity, but will not be able to collect money on it. This is collectively referred to as aggregate technical and commercial losses. Aggregate technical and commercial losses. Very, very high in India. Very, very high AT&C losses. In fact, at one point of time, the AT&C losses was more than 25%. Was more than 25%. Meaning what? If they will supply 100 units of electricity, they'll be able to collect money only on 75 units of electricity, right? So now it has come down, but even today in many of the states it is 18%, 19%, 20%, which means we will have to reduce the AT&C losses further. We'll have to drag it down further. Okay, right? So this is the first concern or the first issue regarding power sector. Let me take a pause now. If you have any concerns, any questions, let me know. I'll address them. After that, we can take a break. What is India Stack? India Stack basically is a collection of multiple digital infrastructure technologies. It is a multiple digital infrastructure technologies which India is offering to many other member countries. That is concept of India Stack. Okay. What is ATC? The loss of electricity because of power theft, because of right, let's say lower or inferior quality material that will be used in distribution of electricity, that is wiring. People will not pay electricity bill, etc. Government is supplying electricity, they will not be able to collect money on it. That is collectively referred to as, right, the aggregate technical and commercial losses. Okay. Explain one point of Vijay Kelkar committee. What one point? What one point? I do not know. Please do let me know. If in transmission of lines having lots of losses, then any alternative for overcoming losses? No, generally you'll experience those losses. Generally you'll experience those losses. Okay. What is a discom? Distribution companies are those companies which are involved in supplying electricity to your home. For example, this is where I expect you to observe what is happening in your home. Observe, Baba, observe. Monthly, will you get electricity bill? Yes or no? Monthly in your home, will you get electricity bill? That is, a person will come with a machine, will look at your electricity meter, will press certain buttons, and a bill will be generated like this. They will give it to you. Right? Let's assume that is how the bills are given. Even if it is something else, don't worry. But if you look at the bill, in the top, they would have written name of the distribution company. What is the distribution company which is supplying electricity to you? These are called as discoms. Okay. What steps have been taken by the government? Let me discuss reforms later. We'll discuss reforms. Don't worry. Okay. First point of committee. Arre Baba, which point you tell me? No, rather than me running back again like this, it makes more sense if you can tell me first point. What was the point? Do not allow the state government agencies to enter into PPP. Reason being, state government is supposed to function for providing welfare, goods and services to the people, not run behind profit making. And if these agencies are entering into a PPP with the central government, it means they are not focused on providing welfare, but they are focused on right running behind profit. So do not allow state agencies to enter into PPPs. What is Jan? My dear, you people do not listen when I tell you. You people don't listen. I said there are two terms, generation and companies. Take the club both of these terms. I said these are Gencos. You do not listen. I don't know what's the problem. Okay. Okay. Let me stop the discussion now. We will continue after the break. Okay. We'll continue after the break. Take a break. So it is 7:06. I'll restart at 7:20. Okay. Welcome back. Am I audible? Can we continue now? Am I audible? Please do let me know. Okay, done. So first problem in power sector is high aggregate technical and commercial losses. Second one is distress in the distribution companies. Distress in the distribution companies. Now, what's a basic distress here? What are we talking about? The distribution companies will purchase electricity and they will sell the electricity to you. Simple process. They will purchase electricity and they will sell electricity to you. And when they will sell electricity, they will write a bill and they will collect certain money from you. Point number one, the expenditure incurred by the distribution companies. I'll repeat, the expenditure, the cost incurred by the distribution companies for supplying 1 unit of electricity to you, it is called as average cost of supply. And having supplied electricity to you, they will collect money from you, they'll collect money from me, they'll collect money from your neighbor, right, etc, etc. So how much money is collected for every 1 unit? It is called as average revenue realized. Average cost of supply, average revenue realized, right? Money that is spent to supply electricity, money that is collected for supplying electricity to you. Now, please tell me, can I say if average revenue realized is smaller than average cost of supply, can I say the distribution companies are incurring losses? Think of it, right? Let me know. If average revenue realized is smaller than average cost of supply, that is, if you want to remember in a much easier way, imagine you're purchasing this bottle at 100 rupee, you are selling the bottle at 90 rupee. You're purchasing the bottle at 100, you're selling the bottle at 90. Is it not a loss for you? Of course, yes. So now the distribution companies purchase electricity, pay higher money for that to supply electricity to you, but when they will collect money, they will collect lesser money compared to how much money they are spending. That is that is leading to a lot of losses in the distribution companies. And now if you look at it, there are okay, there is one student who says teacher bhi nahi visible hai. My dear, please revise. I'm sorry, please refresh. Hit the refresh button. Automatically I'll also become visible and voice will also become audible if that is also not audible. Okay, now let me start. Let me continue now. If you look at what is the problem, if there is losses incurred in the distribution companies, then what is the problem? Problem is simple. Imagine you're a distribution company, you will generate electricity, sell it to me, and I'm supposed to make payment to you. I'm supposed to make payment for electricity. If I'm only incurring losses, don't you think automatically my payment to you will be disrupted? I may not be in a position to pay money to you. So you are selling electricity, but you are not getting paid for that for 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, etc. Will that create problems for generation companies as well? Because imagine generation companies is purchasing coal from a company. Right? They are purchasing coal. For that, they are supposed to make payment. If they do not receive a payment from the distribution company, their payment to fuel supplier will also be delayed. It will be disrupted. So the fuel supplier might also delay, right, transferring fuel or sending fuel to many of these generation companies. Is the problem okay with all of you? So if the distribution companies are incurring losses, it's not just a problem for Discom. It is a problem for the whole supply chain because every step is connected with the next step. Okay, right? So distress in the Discoms is also very high. Next one, fuel adequacy. Next one is the problem of fuel availability. For example, you say that more than 50% of the electricity produced will come from coal. But most of the coal we import into India. Most of the coal that we are using, a lot of coal that we are using in the thermal power plants, we import it. Is it not a problem? Of course, yes, that's a problem. What about solar energy? We want to promote solar energy. But for solar energy, we require panels. All of you seen solar panels or not? You'll see glass structures like this. Okay? Right? So you will see a glass structure like this. These are called as solar panels. So you require solar panels in order to right attract or let's say absorb sunlight, convert that into energy. Even today, we import lot of these solar modules into India, solar panels into India. Of course, it has come down recently, but there is a import dependence. We are importing some of the components of the solar panels itself. So we need to address this also. What about nuclear energy? You want to use the nuclear material, get electricity from it. But the problem is nuclear material we are importing. Or what the nuclear power plants? We are asking foreign companies to construct nuclear power plants in India, which means again money is going out. We are dependent on all of this. So there's a problem even regarding the fuel adequacy issue also. Okay. Next, cross subsidization issue related to cross subsidization. For example, I think I've told you the term cross subsidization earlier also. Let me repeat it. Cross subsidization means government will provide the same good or a service to different consumers at different prices. At different prices. Now, what is the problem with cross subsidization? Let me explain it. Take the example of free electricity to agriculture sector. Free electricity to agriculture sector. Please tell me, this kind of a free electricity to agriculture sector, will it not affect groundwater availability in India? Think of it. Right? Government is providing cross subsidization in electricity. That is, if I purchase electricity, it will be 4 rupees per unit, 5 rupees per unit. But for agriculture sector, 0 rupees. Will that not affect and lead to decline in groundwater levels in India? Of course, yes. Second, many states, mind you, many states are providing free electricity for houses. Do you think all the houses require free electricity in those states? For example, take Delhi, right? For example, take Karnataka. Many of these states are announcing again for all the houses or for some of the houses up to certain level, etc., etc. Do we require to provide so much amount of welfare to the people? And in the context of welfare, please tell me, did you people read Government of India's extension of national food security, free food grains for next 5 years? Think of it. Government of India's extension, whether you agree, disagree, that's a different issue. I'm simply talking about subsidies now. Government of India announcing extension of NFSA free food grains for next 5 years. That was there in the newspaper. And in the last week, not this week, last week, did you people come across loan waivers in agriculture sector? The article in Hindu newspaper itself. Tell me now. If you have read it, good. If you have not read it, then you are not reading newspaper correctly. That's a meaning. If you have read it, it's very good. Right? Did we discuss the idea for loan waivers earlier? Yes or no? In the agriculture sector, did we discuss idea of loan waivers? Is it good? Is it bad? What is the problem? Etc. Right? So there is an issue regarding cross subsidization in the electricity sector. And moreover, whenever government says, think of it, whenever government says this household, right, you will get 200 units free of right cost electricity. It doesn't mean that nobody is paying money for it. I hope you understand my point. Because the distribution company has purchased electricity, somebody has to pay money for it, right? So somebody else cannot say, the producing company, Tata Power, cannot simply say, in the state of right Karnataka, in New Delhi, free electricity is there, so we will not charge money, you take it free of a cost. No, they will charge money. Then who will pay money for all of this? The governments. The governments will end up paying money for all of these, right? You call them as freebies, you call them as a RAVD, whatever you want to call them as. So argument is cross subsidization, right, has a lot of issues. It might lead to inefficient utilization of resources. It might even lead to higher burden on the government. It might lead to wrong targeting of these subsidies, right? So there is a problem regarding cross subsidization electricity sector. And finally, energy security. Energy security, please tell me, how many of you are under the impression that even today we have 24 bar 7 365 days uninterrupted electricity supply in India? Let me see. 24 bar 7 bar 365 uninterrupted electricity supply in India? No, even today we do not have it. In fact, Government of India's document shows that in bigger cities, the larger cities, they are almost there, right? Somewhere in the range of 23 hours to 24 hours, larger cities. But if you go to the rural part of India, if you go to villages, in many of the states, they supply 16 hours. In many of the states, they supply 18 hours. In many of the states, they supply, right, 20 hours, so on and so forth. And come summer season, right, you will come across this. Come summer season, don't you think we will face shortage of electricity? That is, the demand will be very high. The amount of production that we have will not be sufficient to meet the demand for electricity. Then what will happen? Power cuts, rationing of electricity, power cuts, right? They'll say shut down, right? Basically cut electricity for 6 hours, right? 8 hours, 12 hours in rural India, etc., etc. So 24 bar 7 bar 365, we are yet to achieve that kind of a energy security. And some of you might be thinking, what is the use of it? My dear, if you can ensure there is a 24 bar 7 bar 365 electricity, industrial growth will be much higher. Growth in industries will be much higher, right? More productivity can be observed in the agriculture sector. And not just that, it has been connected, that is electricity, energy security has been connected with a better learning level of school going children, with the better learning levels of school going children, because it has been seen that in many of the villages, the children will go to the school, come back to home, but they don't have electricity to study, to revise, etc., right? So that is basically the argument. We need to have 24 bar 7 365 electricity. Now, what kind of reforms have been undertaken? What kind of measures have been undertaken by the government? First one, there is a scheme by the name of Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme, RDSS. There is a scheme by the name of Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme. Now, before RDSS was implemented, was implemented from 2020. Before RDSS, there was a scheme by the name of UDAY, Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Now, please look at both of the schemes. Can I say, at least by looking at it, can I say both of them cover distribution companies? They're not covering generation companies. They're not covering transmission companies. They are targeting only the distribution companies. Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana and Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme. Why? Why are they covering distribution sector? Point being, distribution sector, that is the discoms, are incurring huge amount of a loss. They're incurring huge amount of a loss, and over a period of time, this is not sustainable. You cannot sustain the sector with such a huge increasing level of losses at the discoms. What has the government of India proposed under the Uday scheme? What was proposed under Uday scheme? Imagine here is a distribution company. Imagine here is a distribution company. It has taken the loan from a lender, let's say a bank. It has taken a loan from a lender. Because it is incurring a loss, it is unable to repay the loan. In simple terms, the debt of the distribution company, now will be paid by the state government. The debt of the distribution company will be paid by the state government. Why state government? You people tell me, why is the state government supposed to pay the debt of the distribution companies? Can I say because the distribution companies are owned by the state governments? Yes or no? The distribution companies, please go back to the pre-break. Before the break, what we have discussed. Okay, so the distribution company is not private sector. I'm talking about entities owned by the government. So the distribution companies, the discoms, are owned by the state government. So central government said the state government has to repay the debt of the distribution companies. And to help the state government, in repaying this particular debt, central government allowed the state governments to issue bonds in the market. Central government allowed the state governments to issue bonds, and these bonds were called as Uday bonds. Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana bonds. They were allowed to issue bonds in the market, collect money, and repay the debt of the distribution companies. And right, because the debt of the distribution companies will be paid by the state government, the center state, the distribution companies, one, they will have to reduce the AT&C losses. They will have to reduce AT&C losses. And second, the gap that is there between ACS and ARR. I repeat, the gap that is there between ACS and ARR, the gap also has to be reduced to zero. Right? These were the two targets which were given by the central government for the distribution companies under Uday Yojana. But the state governments did not implement any reform which would have helped the distribution companies to reduce the gap or reduce the AT&C losses. And that is the reason central government decided Uday Yojana is not providing any benefit to the distribution companies. Hence, from 2020, Uday Yojana was withdrawn by the government. And in place of Uday Yojana, now look at the name of the scheme and tell me, does it make sense to you now why this scheme is called as a revamped distribution sector scheme? I'll repeat. Look at the name of the scheme and tell me, does the name of the scheme make sense to you? Revamped. Revamp means adjusted. Revamped distribution sector scheme. This particular scheme has been implemented. Now, what are the provisions? How it is different compared to Uday? The provisions are very simple. Earlier, multiple schemes were there of Government of India. Right? For example, there were schemes such as Integrated Power Distribution Scheme, IPDS. There's a scheme by the name of DDU-GJY, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Grama Jyoti Yojana. Central government has merged all the schemes, all these are different schemes into one scheme. That's point number one. Point number two, central government says if the distribution companies, will meet targets under this scheme, I'll repeat, if the distribution companies will meet the targets under the scheme, only then central government will provide assistance to the distribution companies. That is, what are the targets? The aggregate technical and commercial losses will have to be reduced in the range of 12% to 15% by 24 and 25, financial year 25. And the gap that is there between ACS and ARR, the gap also should be reduced to zero by 24 and 25. So from 21, you keep yearly targets. For example, I'm a 738, I'm making you chief minister now. Congratulations. You're a chief minister of a state. Now, annually, you'll have to create targets. You'll have to set up targets. Let's say hypothetically, your AT&C losses are 19%. Let's say hypothetically, your AT&C losses are 19%. So between 21 to 25, you'll have to create yearly targets so that by 2025, your AT&C losses will become, let's say, 13%. So center says states must prepare the annual targets and submit the targets to me. And if you meet these targets, I repeat, if you meet these targets, only then I will provide you assistance under RDSS. If you are not able to meet these targets, I will stop giving you assistance. I will not give you any kind of assistance. Right? So now please tell me, all of you okay with RDSS, revamped distribution sector scheme? And does it make sense why Government of India withdrew, right, the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, and why it has implemented RDSS? RDSS, an improved version. It's a basically an improved version of Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Under Uday Yojana, there were no conditions that if they do not meet the target, what will happen? Those kind of provisions were not there under Uday. But under RDSS, government says, you want to get assistance from me, then meet the targets, only then I will give you assistance. That is RDSS. Next one is a PM Saubhagya Yojana. PM Saubhagya Yojana. What is this PM Saubhagya? Pradhana Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana. Pradhana Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana. PM Saubhagya. Under PM Saubhagya, very simple logic. The government will identify certain houses which do not have electricity connection. I'll repeat the statement. Under PM Saubhagya Yojana, government will identify the houses which do not have electricity connection. And the electricity connection to such houses will be provided free of a cost. Right? That scheme is referred to as PM Saubhagya Yojana. And the nodal agency for the implementation of PM Saubhagya is Rural Electrification Corporation, REC. Rural Electrification Corporation, REC is a nodal agency for PM Saubhagya. Can we go forward now? And by the way, because I'm discussing so many schemes, please read about Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana now. Those who have read today's Hindu or any other newspaper will understand what I'm talking about. Please read about Pradhana Mantri Awas Yojana. Next year, the potential of question being asked on PM Yojana, PM Awas Yojana is very, very high. Why? I'll just tell you in a nutshell what is the issue all about. Central government has a rule called as a rebranding rule. I'll repeat the statement. Central government has a rule called as a rebranding rule. What do you mean by rebranding? Imagine you're the prime minister, I'm the chief minister. Imagine. Okay, you're the prime minister, I'm the chief minister. Under one of the schemes, you will allocate funds to me. It is your scheme. You will allocate funds to me. But what I will do is, I will take the funds under the scheme, but I will name the scheme something else and give it to the people. I will use that money, but I will rebrand. Rebrand means create a different name, change the name of the scheme, and use the money under that scheme. That is called as a rebranding rule. Rebranding rule. Very, very famous now. Thanks to the Andhra Pradesh government, it has become very famous. Earlier also it was done by Bengal government. Read that article, you'll understand. That rule is called as a rebranding rule. Central government now says, if you go for rebranding, I will not give you assistance under the scheme. I will not give you assistance under the scheme. Very simple. What is the name of my scheme? You will have to give those benefits using the same name. You cannot change the name to something else and give the benefit. Right? So read that article if you have not read that article, and start reading more and more about PMAY now. I hope you understand this. Do not expect UPSC to pick up a question from Hindu newspaper. Absolutely no. Right? PMAY, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. How many of you know that earlier the name of the scheme was something else? Right? In the name, earlier the name of the scheme was earlier something else. Right? The name of the scheme was Indira Awas Yojana, Rajiv Awas Yojana. Government of India changed the name of the schemes. Two different components are brought into only one, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, rural component, urban component. Right? So I hope you understand all of it. Read. Okay, done. Let me go to the next initiative, LED program, National LED program. Okay, under this there are two components. One, we want to replace or we want to promote consumption of LED bulbs in the houses. We want to replace old bulbs with LED bulbs, or we want to promote consumption of LED bulbs in houses. For that, we have a program by the name of Ujala Yojana. Ujala basically stands for Unnata Jyoti by affordable LEDs for all. Right? Unnata Jyoti by affordable LEDs for all. Ujala Yojana. So we have a street light program also. That is, in case of street light national program, will replace all the street lights, that old bulbs will be replaced with LED bulbs, that is street light. And second component is basically the households, where we want to promote usage of LED bulbs under Ujala Yojana. What are the points here? This Ujala Yojana to promote LED bulbs is being implemented by a special purpose vehicle set up by the union government, that is basically EESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited. The government wants people to consume means use more and more LED bulbs, because government says LED bulbs will consume lesser electricity compared to earlier bulbs, right? So that is a precise reason. When you start using LED bulbs, government argues that your electricity bills will automatically come down. So the demand for the electricity will come down, electricity bill will also automatically come down. So it is beneficial for everyone. Hence, right, LED program is also being implemented by the government. And finally, another set of reform, government is promoting renewable energy in India. The production, the distribution, and the consumption of renewable energy is being promoted by the government. For example, earlier government of India set up a target of having 175 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity in India. But now, by 2022 was the target, we have been able to achieve more than 100 gigawatts. Now, Government of India says by 2030, I repeat, by 2030, will more than double this to 500 gigawatts. By 2030, will more than double this to 500 gigawatts. We will have 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity in India. Right? So these are some of the very important steps taken by the Government of India in regards to electricity or power sector. Now, before I go forward, I just want to reiterate one point, right? Hammer one point into your head. What is the point? Do not assume that whatever I've discussed, if you remember that, it's more than sufficient, especially in infrastructure. Absolutely no. I would strongly advise you, keep on reading current affairs, update current affairs, especially in this chapter. Because in railways, right, for example, can I say potential of RRTS, Railway Rapid Transit System? Next year, question is very high. You will not get RRTS in the book. Trust me, you will not get RRTS in the book. Right? You will have to read about it, right, from current affairs. Kavach, read about it from the current affairs. So my advice to all of you is very simple, especially in infrastructure. Some of you are asking, sir, in the book it is not given. I know many of the books do not cover infrastructure. Even if they have covered infrastructure, they will talk about how many railways are there, how many railway routes are there, how many national highways will run now vertical like this, how many national highways will run parallel like this. All of that is of no consequence to UPSC, right? How many trucks are there, how many railways are there, how many bogies are there, how many coaches are there. All of that has no utilization for UPSC. My recommendation is current affairs, read that, update that. Okay, let me go to the next component in infrastructure, railways infrastructure. In case of railways infrastructure, right, what are the important points? Point number one, railways is a part of Government of India. That is, the Government of India has set up Ministry of Railways. Railways is a ministerial undertaking. So through this ministry, Government of India ensures railway operation, railway infrastructure, etc. is being implemented. That is a point number one. Second, if you look at the total length of railway network in India, India has one of the highest, longest railway networks in the world. Generally, apart from India, USA, China, Russia, right? These are some of the countries which have, apart from India, the largest or the longest railway networks in the global market. Now, in case of railways, there are two components. In case of railways, there are two components, or two segments. One is basically called as a passenger segment. Second one is called as a freight segment. Freight means any raw material, any goods, right? Any parcels, etc., which are carried, which are transported. So railways is used for transportation of passengers. Railways is also used for the movement of goods, right? Parcels, etc., etc., from one part of India to another part of India. Now, in case of India, Over a period of time, if you look at the time of independence, at the time of independence, the amount of railway infrastructure that was developed was very, very high. In fact, at the time of independence and even after the independence for many years, railways was used as a most important mode of a transportation in India. I repeat, railways was used as a most important mode of a transportation in India. But over a period of time, railways has lost relevance or has experienced reduced importance compared to other modes of transportation. For example, sir, what do you mean by that? If you look at out of the total freight transportation in India that is done today, I repeat, out of the total freight transportation that is done in India today, most of the freight transportation is done through road network. Most of it is done through road network. A small part of it, generally around 30%, I'm rounding off the number, around 30% of it comes from railways. So there was a point of time when more than 70 to 80% used to happen through railways. Today, around 30% happens through railways and more than 50 to 60% happens through roadways. Why? What has happened in railways? What are the problems, etc., etc.? Let's try and understand. One, in case of railways, understand this carefully. Compared to road network, before independence, railway network was developed very well in India. Railway network was developed very well compared to road network. But after independence, road network has been promoted more. Road network construction has increased by a higher percentage compared to development of railway network. And that is the precise reason in India today, if you want to transport a good from one point to another point, you can easily do it through road network. Of course, yes, it is taking longer time, cost is higher, yes, of course, yes. But any part of India, any remotest part of India, you can get easily the access through road network. Whereas in case of railway network, there are many parts of India, where right access to those parts using railway network becomes very, very difficult. It becomes very, very difficult to using only the railway network. So understand the logic here. Roadways accounts for majority of the freight transportation. Number of competitors in case of roadways is very, very high. Lot of logistics companies are there in India, private sector, specifically private sector. Whereas in case of railways, can I say there is a monopoly of government of India in case of railway transportation? Think of it. In case of railway transportation, it is like a monopoly of government of India. Only government of India will take care of it through the Ministry of Railways. And now tell me, how many of you have had the experience, first hand experience of moving, let's say, a two-wheeler using railways in India? Let me see. How many of you have had a first hand experience of transporting a two-wheeler using railways in India? It's very difficult. It is very cumbersome, very difficult. I'll tell you how. Right? First, you will take the two-wheeler, the railway master or railway station official will come. They will look at it and say, okay, get all the documents. You will take all the documents, but then the railway official will say the name of the person in the document for the proof of ownership of vehicle is different. You are different, both are different. How can I accept it? Then somehow you will manage and get all these documents again. Then they'll say you'll have to get it packed, right? You will have to hire some more people who are sitting in the railway stations to pack the product, right? They will drain out all the petrol, take out all the petrol, package the product, then put it in the railway. Then it will go and stop to some other station. You'll have to go all the way to that particular station, right? Get your product again outside, carry petrol with you, fill the petrol, then you will right be allowed to take out the bike. So I hope you understand it's a very cumbersome process. Again, UPSC will not ask you the process. All I'm trying to convince you people is the fact that it is very difficult, cumbersome process. Right? Rather than this, many of the people will prefer to put it in a truck. will prefer to transport it using many of these other modes of transportation, that is a truck method itself. It is much easier. And in case of railways, only one supplier. The railway officials do not listen to you. They are not interested in your interest. Whereas private sector companies, they will provide you lot of importance. They will provide you a lot of importance, right? For example, in railway station, you want to book a parcel, right? You might be a software engineer, you might be anybody who is earning 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees. They are not worried about you. They're like, okay, come in line, stand in line and come in line. Whereas, right, if you talk to a logistics company, the person will come to your home. They will say, please don't worry, we will package everything. You don't have to be worried about safety. We will take guarantee. We will transport it. We will ensure that it will reach your home in the other city, etc. etc. So in terms of experience also, dealing with private sector is much easier compared to dealing with government officials. Right? So handling points are much lower in roadways compared to railways. Handling points means how many times the product will be lifted and shifted. For example, a two-wheeler, you'll have to drop it at the gate of railway station. Somebody will carry it till the railway, right? That is coach. Somebody will lift it, put it in the coach. Then it will reach the railway station. Somebody else will again remove it from the railway coach, put it on the platform. Somebody will again bring it here, etc. etc. So number of people, number of times the product will be moved will be much higher in railways compared to roadways. So when the number of handling points are very high, chances of damages, chances of theft, chances of mismanagement are also generally very higher. So handling points are very high in railways compared to roadways. Dealing with railway officials, government officials is very difficult. Compared to that, dealing with private sector agencies is much easier. So this is the set of reasons as to why the railways are accounting for lower percentage of cargo transportation in India compared to roadways. Second one, let me go to the last point, high operating ratio. I'll come back to the middle two also, don't worry. High operating ratio. Now, what is this operating ratio? The operating ratio simply measures what is the efficiency of your revenue generation. How efficient are you in terms of your revenue generation? That is, for incurring, right, for generating a revenue of 100 rupee, how much expenditure are you incurring? What is the ratio? Understand this. For generating a revenue of, let's say, 100 rupees, how much expenditure you are incurring? For example, if you come across operating ratio of 98, what does it mean? I'll repeat the statement. If you come across a statement, operating ratio of railways is 98, what does it mean? You will have to spend 98 rupees to generate 100 rupees. That is the meaning of it. Now, on the other side, what if I say your operating ratio is 103? If I say your operating ratio is 103, it simply means to generate revenue of 100 rupee, you are expending or you are spending 103 rupees. So please tell me, which one would you prefer? Having an operating ratio of 90, operating ratio of 98, or operating ratio of 103? Which one would you prefer? Right? Don't you think lower the operating ratio more beneficial for the railways? Which means if you are spending 90, generating 100, can I say it means you are generating surplus using which you can spend money in the railways development of infrastructure? Yes or no? If your operating ratio is lower, it simply means you are able to generate a surplus amount of revenue using which you can spend money, again develop infrastructure in the railways. But in case of India, that is a problem. In case of India, operating ratio is very high. OR, operating ratio is very high. How high? 98, 99, 97, which means the amount of expenses you're taking care or you're incurring leaves very little amount, which is a surplus, which you can use for investment again in railways. That is a problem in India. In fact, if you have, I asked you people to read a Hindu newspaper, 3 articles, 3 days. Correct? In the last week, I remember it. I told you people in Hindu newspaper, 3 days, there have been 3 articles on railways, right? Consecutively, by the way. Right? So if you have not read those 3 articles, read it even now. Very nice articles, very important. Again, lot of it is technical information. You don't have to worry about all the technical, but at least concept wise, what is the problem in railways, you'll get a lot of information. If you have not read those articles, last week 3 days consecutively it has come in Hindu, please read it back. So come back to the discussion here. In India, operating ratio is very high. Now some of you will ask, sir, why operating ratio is very high? The reason being the government cross subsidizes. One of the prominent reason, government cross subsidizes railway transportation. That is, when a passenger is traveling, government will have a very low tariff, and when a good is right used for transportation purposes, the tariff on the transportation of freight will be much higher. In fact, because of this, what is happening is, on one side in the freight segment, we are generating more money. On the other side, in passenger segment, we are incurring losses. And many of the times, what happens is, the amount of surplus that we earn from freight is smaller compared to amount of loss in revenue in passenger segment, which means overall in the railways, there are losses. Right? Has it happened in India? Of course, it has been happening in case of India. So, first one is right. How much percentage out of the total freight transportation is done through railways? It is smaller, somewhere around 30%. Second one is operating ratio is very high in India. Third one is low passenger, low passenger to freight ratio. Right? What do you mean by low passenger to freight ratio? Couple of minutes ago I said, in case of India, for passenger we provide a lot of subsidies. The tariff rate for passenger is very low. So the passenger to freight ratio basically is a measure on an average how much is the passenger tariffs in India divided by on an average how much is the freight tariff in India. In case of India, please remember the passenger to freight ratio comes somewhere around zero point 0.3. Right? The passenger to freight ratio comes somewhere around 0.3. Meaning what? For every 1 rupee on an average, we charge for the freight, we charge 30 paisa on an average to a passenger. 0.3 is the passenger to freight ratio. If you look at many of these developed countries, such as take China, France, USA, the passenger to freight ratio is somewhere around 1 or more than 1. Meaning what? In those countries, they're charging, right? They're charging passengers higher compared to what they're charging to the freight. So one of the reasons why railways incur losses or higher operating ratio is the reason that is a passenger to freight ratio is very low in India. Next one, private sector participation comparatively is also very less. In case of railways, compared to let's say roadways, private sector says in roadways, right, we can basically we are involved in the policy making, right? That is our interest is considered, right? The revenue generation models are efficient for us. We are able to spend money, generate lot of revenue. But in case of railways, it is almost a monopoly of government of India. Government of India through its ministry will decide how much investment has to be done. Government through its ministry will implement all the projects. They will review all the projects. Officials, the whole workforce is government of India or is under the government of India. So because of all of this, private sector is not interested in investing in railways compared to let's say as much interest they show in investing in civil aviation market or let's say port sector or even for that matter roadway sector. So private sector participation is very less in the railway sector compared to other sectors. What kind of reforms has the government of India implemented? What kind of reforms? First one is bullet train project. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of this bullet train project. The first bullet train project in India has been proposed. has been proposed to connect two cities. One is right Ahmedabad, and the second one is Mumbai. Right, so Ahmedabad to Mumbai, the first bullet train project has been proposed. Two states, which will run between two states, that is Gujarat and Maharashtra. Now, what is the importance of this project? What is the importance? First one, this kind of technology, we are going to use it for the first time. Any kind of a new technology is considered good, right? So first time, this kind of a new technology in railways sector is going to be used in India. Second, the amount of infrastructure, right? We are going to, amount of infrastructure that we are going to create, that will be a humongous infrastructure. So that will create a demand for the labor, that will create, right? Let's say certain set of experts, etc. for Indian economy. That is also beneficial for us. Third, with creation of such an infrastructure, we are expecting again connected to RRTS as well. Connected to RRTS, basically the same logic. If people can travel between these two cities, both are industrial cities by the way, if people can travel between these two cities in a span of 2 hours, don't you think the chances of migration of the people will come down? Yes or no? The chances of migration of the people, that is, let's say I'm an employee of a company, and my company is around 40 kilometers away from, right, let's say from Mumbai it is around 40 kilometers away, or into Mumbai I want to travel every day 40 kilometers. So rather than traveling 40 kilometers and spend 2 hours 3 hours on the road itself, I will migrate into Mumbai. I will take all my family, move into Mumbai. And do you think the infrastructure that is present in industrial cities such as Mumbai, do you think that is sufficient? Think again. Do you think the infrastructure we have in Mumbai is sufficient for population of Mumbai? Absolutely no. Some of you are saying yes. My dear, have you seen people traveling in trains in Mumbai? Have you seen that? Right? When flooding will take place, have you seen what will happen in Mumbai? Again, I'm not denigrating any city. The infrastructure that is present is not, if it's not sufficient, that's a fact by the way, right? The schooling infrastructure, hospital infrastructure, road infrastructure, housing infrastructure, electricity, water, we have not created the infrastructure to take care of all the people in a city, right? It's very very highly overpopulated, and same can be attributed to even Delhi for that matter. So think of it. If you have a mode of transportation which will connect these cities in a very quick manner, right? Instead of taking 3 hours on a road, if you can travel in these two, right, cities from one city to another city in a span of 30 minutes, 40 minutes, then people will not think of migrating from one place to another place. Migration will come down. And when train projects are created like this, can I say, people rather than traveling on road using their own vehicle or using buses etc., will shift to train. And as a result of this, can I say, think of it, can I say, demand for fuel will come down, emissions will come down, right? So can you connect all of these even to RRTS? Just think, can you connect all of these points even to RRTS, that is railway rapid transit system? Of course yes, right? Population migration will be controlled, right? People will move from road mode to railway mode. Demand for fuel is expected to come down, pollution is expected to come down. And more importantly, whenever you develop these kind of railway projects, same thing for RRTS, same thing for bullet train, the investments, right, many companies will start investing, right, in different stations now. That is, let's imagine if this is Mumbai and this is right Ahmedabad. Along this road, along this route now, many companies will start making investments and start setting up offices, manufacturing facilities etc. Why? It is easier for people to come now. It is very easier. And for companies, think of it, don't you think setting up a new office at 20 kilometers away outside Bombay, which is easily connected to this particular station, for them, real estate cost will be very lesser? Yes or no? Real estate cost for them will be very, very less. So that is what is expected. Whenever these kind of projects are developed, right? This is what is expected. Companies will start setting up offices outside these cities as well, right? Apply the same logic to even RRTS, same logic to RRTS. So these are the benefits. What are the concerns related to this issue? What are the concerns? One, cost of the project. We are spending more than 1 lakh crore rupees. I repeat, we are spending more than 1 lakh crore rupees only on one project, right? So don't you think we can use, again, this is a criticism. Just like we have advantages, there will also be criticism. Can we use this amount of money to improve safety in majority of railway infrastructure in India? Of course, yes. Right. So that is one. Second one is, if you are going to spend more than 1 lakh crore rupees in one project, what will be the ticket price? What will be the ticket price? Right. So the ticket prices, if you're going to charge very high, people will not use it. If you charge very low, then the amount of revenue that you're going to generate will be very lesser. So pricing, right? What tariff you are going to impose? That is also a question here. Third one, land acquisition. And that's a common concern regarding any infrastructure project in India. Land acquisition also has become a problem. Okay. Next one is government of India has merged railway budget with union budget. Earlier, that is before 2016 and 17, we used to announce a railway budget separately, union budget separately. But from 16 and 17, government of India has done away with this. They have taken the railway budget and they have put it as a part of union budget. There is only one budget now, union budget. Why? Right? How can you say this is a reform? Right? Reasons are simple. Point number one. Rather than two different ministries preparing two different budgets, now only one ministry will prepare budget for all the modes of transportation. Good or bad? Think of it. Rather than two different ministries preparing two different budgets, only one ministry will prepare budget for railways, roadways, airways, right, waterways. Of course, yes, it is good. It is good. Okay. Point number two, railway budget is not a constitutional requirement. It is not a constitutional requirement. It was a practice. Right, before independence we had two separate budgets, and after independence also we continued it. But the current government basically was of the argument that, or of the viewpoint that, it is not a constitutional requirement. Why should we continue it? Why should we continue it? No, not needed. Another reason was, over a period of time, the railway revenues have been affected, but on the other side, railway expenditures have increased. So if you look at it, many years, railways have incurred losses. The expenditures have been higher compared to the amount of revenue that you have generated. So what makes more sense? Let's have a consolidated policy for all the modes of infrastructure where we will try to address the issues in railways as well. And finally, one more reason that was cited by the government was how much money is allocated in railways and how much money is allocated in the overall budget, union budget. The size of railway budget is just a fraction of the union budget. So because it is very, very small, why do we have a separate railway budget? It doesn't make any sense. Let's bring it under union budget itself. So these are some of the reasons which have been cited by the government, right, to basically merge railway budget with union budget. Government is also improving safety in railways. How? Kavach project, please read that. I've not written it here. It is there in the current affairs. Read it. Another measure which has been implemented by the government to improve safety is Setu Bharatam project. Setu Bharatam project. Now, what is being done under Setu Bharatam project? Simple. Government says there are railway crossings. Right? All of you seen railway crossings? What do you mean by railway crossings? Imagine this is a railway line. Imagine this is a railway line. This will be the road. Right? A road as well as railway crossings will be crossing each other. This is called as railway crossing. And what is the problem at railway crossings? Multiple incidences of accidents have taken place. There have been multiple instances where accidents have taken place at railway crossings. So Government of India says, let's eliminate railway crossings. How? How can we eliminate railway crossings? We'll construct railway over bridges or under bridges. That is, right, let's say a road is there and we'll create a railway over crossing like this. That is, there is no contact between how the railway will cross, that is the railway lines as well as the road. So we'll basically create a situation wherein infrastructure is created where we are going to eliminate all the railway crossings. And with elimination of railway crossings, automatically the problems or the issues with railway accidents will also come down. Right? That is also one safety measure. And the next point, private sector entry into railways. Private sector entry, private sector has been allowed, I repeat, private sector has been allowed to operate railways now. Until very recently, only government was allowed to operate trains, that is provide railway transportation services. Now private sector will also be allowed to operate railways now. What is the objective here? Why is the Government of India promoting it? Listen to me very carefully. Point number one, if you are allowed to operate a railway route, let's say two cities, a railway route is there, you will be allowed to operate in these two cities. Point number one, will you invest money to purchase railways here? That is, will you invest and take it on lease or purchase railway coaches, railway engine? Of course, yes. So you are doing the investment, not government. You are doing the investment. Point number one. Point number two, if you are going to invest money, private sector, can I expect better quality services to customers? Private sector, can I expect better quality services? Sir, what do you mean by better quality services? Cleanliness of the coach, right? Or for that matter, on time arrival, on time departure. So all these are quality services for the passengers. So look at this. Government is not investing money. Private sector is investing. Customer is getting better quality services. And third point, if you are allowed to operate in this route, government will collect certain amount of revenue from you. Government will collect certain amount of revenue. So government is not investing but earning money, but also ensuring, and also is ensuring services, quality services are provided to customers. So it is a benefit to private sector because ticket prices, private sector will decide that, government will not decide it. So private sector will invest money, expects to generate profits. That is good for private sector. As a customer, I am happy because cleanliness of the coach, on time services, etc. These are beneficial for me. Government is happy because they are not investing but they are earning money. So it is a win-win-win situation for all the stakeholders. But having said so, there are certain concerns. What are the concerns? Private sector has not shown too much interest, has not shown too much interest in this policy of the government. Why? Private sector says this is very new model for us. Operating railways is not old for us. We don't have any experience. It's a very new model. So I do not know how this model will work out. Whether I'm going to generate sufficient revenues or not, I'm unable to find out, right? Because we don't have a lot of experience behind this. Second, the number of routes which have been given up by the government for private sector operation, they are not happy with these kind of routes. They are unhappy with these routes. That's the second one. Third one, if private sector is going to invest money and they are going to decide the ticket prices, there is a concern that ticket prices will slightly be higher. The prices of the tickets, right, which will be charged to the customers will slightly be higher. That is also concern. So these are some of the very important points to have a critical evaluation regarding this policy of the government to allow the private sector to operate trains. Now, the last point within railways, the National Rail Plan 2030. National Rail Plan 2030. Now, what is this National Rail Plan 2030? Point number one, Government of India has set up a target to increase the share of transportation of railways from 27% to 45%. Okay, from 27% to 45%. We want to increase the share of railways. Point number two, we want to become a net zero emitter by 2030. In railways, mind you, not overall economy. Please do let me know what is the target year for the whole Indian economy becoming net zero emitter. Let me see how many of you are reading newspapers. What is the target year set up by Government of India to make India a net zero emitter, right, by 2070? Whole economy. India, I'm talking about 2070. Railways, 2030 is the target. For railways, it is 2030. For India, whole of India, it is 2070. It was there in the newspaper. Very often, it is there in the newspaper. Okay. To create capacity ahead of the demand. That is, we know with rise in the population, right? We know the population is going to increase till 2045. So we know that with rise in population, the demand for railways will be higher. But even before the demand increases, we will create infrastructure, right? We will create infrastructure which will be sufficient to meet the demand. That is basically the third point. And the fourth point, for successful implementation, for successful implementation of the national rail plan, we will take the assistance of the state governments, we will take the assistance of public sector utilities or enterprises for that matter, will take the assistance of the private sector. So all the other parties will also help Government of India in implementation of National Rail Plan 2030. Okay, so these are certain very important provisions of NRP, National Rail Plan 2030. Okay, done. So can we solve questions now? Can we solve questions? Questions from industrial policy have been left out. Let's solve industrial policy, and tomorrow we'll take up from investment models. And some of you are worried. I don't know why. Some of you are always worried about me solving questions. My dear, I'm not going to run away. I will solve questions. If not today, I'll solve it tomorrow. If not tomorrow, when I take extra class, I'll solve it. I'm not going to run away. Please don't worry about it. I'm here whenever I take class. If I've not discussed the questions, I will cover the questions. Please don't panic. Let's start. Let's start. Okay, 54% have answered correctly. Consider the following statements about Mudra. Mudra is micro units, development and refinancing agency. It has been set up as a wholly owned subsidiary of NABARD. No, it has been set up as a subsidiary of SIDBI, Small Industries Development Bank of India. It is a part of SIDBI, not a NABARD. Okay, first statement is wrong. Its objective is to provide credit access to micro and small enterprises. Second statement is correct. That is the objective of Mudra. Right, so the right option for the question will be option B. Only two is true. Okay. Next one. In the index of 8 core industries, which one of the following is given the highest weight? Huh. Okay. 41% have answered correctly. It's B, right? It's B. Out of the four which are given here, in index of industrial production, which has the highest weightage? Right? Electricity. Please check it. Please check. I'm pretty sure it is electricity. Option B is the right one. Electricity is the right one. Okay. Next, normally countries shift from agriculture to industry and then later to services. But India shifted directly from agriculture to services. What are the reasons for the huge growth in services vis-a-vis industry in the country? Can India become a developed country without a strong industrial base? What does the statement say? Please think of it. And it's a factual information. That is, whenever you study evolution of economies, whenever you study about the evolution of economies, generally the economies initially they will be focused on primary sector. Primary sector is agriculture. Primary is agriculture. And from primary they will shift to secondary. Secondary is industries, manufacturing. From primary they'll shift to secondary. And after they achieve maturity in the secondary, they will shift to tertiary. They'll shift to tertiary, that is services sector. This is how the evolution happens from primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary. And if you look at it, there is a connection between all the three sectors. There is a connection between all the three sectors. For example, please let me know, can I say secondary sector will help in the growth of tertiary as well as primary? Think of it. Secondary sector plays a very important role in the growth of tertiary as well as primary. Right? That is, let's say, whatever is manufactured, whatever goods you are manufacturing, whatever technology you are manufacturing, will it not help in the growth of services sector? Of course, yes. Will it not help in the growth of agriculture sector? Again, the answer is yes. So argument is generally the countries evolve from primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary. But in case of India, we have directly jumped from primary to tertiary, skipping secondary. It's a fact. We have jumped directly from primary to tertiary. Today, in case of India, the tertiary, that is service sector, contributes more than 50%. Right? So argument is what has happened, why it has happened, what are the reasons, and can India become a developed country without having a strong industrial base? That is, without having a very good secondary sector, can India become a developed country? So let me start with the first part of the question. First part of the question. What are the reasons why India has jumped directly from primary to tertiary? What has led to growth in the services sector? Right? Services sector has grown in India by leaps and bounds, especially in the last 3 decades, because of LPG reforms, because of growth of manufacturing sector in India. That is, industrial growth in India also has led to growth in services sector. Because of higher per capita incomes, a rise in the per capita incomes in India, because of a higher, new types of, right, let's say services, new types of technologies which have been invented in India or imported into India. So these are some of the reasons. In fact, we have discussed all these reasons as a separate slide. These are some of the reasons as to why service sector has grown at a very high pace, contributes more than 50% to GDP compared to manufacturing sector. We have not achieved, right, maturity. We have not achieved growth in the manufacturing sector. Directly, we have achieved such a high growth in the service sector. Coming to the second part of the question, can India become a developed country without a strong industrial base? Answer is no. Right? India cannot become a developed country without a strong industrial base. And right, please trust me, in the exam, please don't write only one statement. Don't say, no, India cannot become a developed country without industrial base. Why? Explain that also. Tell that also. Reasons being, you require industrial base which will support growth in the tertiary as well as primary. You require that. Second, right, there is a huge amount of employment availability in India. Disguised unemployment is also there. In agriculture sector, we need to move this particular people into one more sector. Where can we move them? Manufacturing sector. Services is not so labor intensive compared to manufacturing. Manufacturing sector has the potential to generate lot of jobs. So we need to move this labor into the manufacturing. Labor force availability is very high, right? It is required for the growth of both the primary as well as a tertiary. Okay, right? So these are some of the reasons why we should have a very strong industrial base. And finally, in conclusion, you can say that In order to promote manufacturing in India, Government of India is in the process of implementing various schemes such as production linked incentive PLI, Make in India, allowing FDI foreign direct investment in manufacturing sector, etc. So these are some of the reforms that have been undertaken by the government to promote manufacturing. Okay, that is your conclusion. Done. So anybody has a doubt, anybody has any questions, etc., please do let me know so that we can address the questions, then we can wind up the session. Show leaderboard. Okay. Is UPI uses rupee only around India? Okay, just a second. Is UPI uses rupee only around the world? No, my dear. From one to another, it will keep on changing. UPI technology is used. Okay. But railways cannot be run for like every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, just like buses. Then this will go against the interest of the people. How will this be solved then? My dear, if you are reading the newspapers correctly, you will know the answer to this. Honestly, tell me, how many of you have read regarding RRTS? You expect the faculty to read everything and you will not read anything. That's a problem, by the way. Okay. Honestly, tell me, how many of you have read regarding RRTS? What is speciality? One of the speciality about RRTS, if you have read it, right, don't you think you'll have come across one point where the government is saying we have the potential to have a frequency of one train every 15 minutes under RRTS? Yes or no? Read it, by the way, read it. I don't know why you people are not reading. What is the reason? Is it that you are so busy with your UPC preparation that you are not reading current affairs? Is that the problem? That should not be a problem because reading current affairs is part of your UPC preparation. So read about RATS. They have clearly stated that they have the potential to run once every 50 minutes. They have the potential to run RRTS train, by the way. And what about metro? In metro also, right? They have potential to run once every 7 minutes, 8 minutes a metro train. So I hope you understand. So that particular problem already has been addressed. Friday articles, I'll share it tomorrow. Right? I do not have it now. I'll share it tomorrow. Don't worry. Tomorrow I'll share certain set of articles related to what important articles have appeared in the last 1 week from all the other chapters. Okay. Sir, investment will increase means in point private sector operating trains. Please explain again. If you want to operate a train, right? Let's say there are two cities, A and B, 200 kilometers, 500 kilometers apart. Government has given the right for you to operate a train in these two cities, between these two cities. Now, to operate the train, you'll have to take an engine on lease. Yes or no? You'll have to take an engine on lease, or you'll have to purchase, which means you're investing. Right? That is the investment. Tomorrow is the last class. Officially, yes. Officially, as per the schedule, tomorrow is the last class. But again, I'll repeat it. I've skipped two classes. I've missed two classes last week. Okay. Right. Those two sessions, in order to complete the syllabus, I'll take extra class. Please don't worry. Okay. What are the reasons why companies are not taking up routes? Right. Only around 12 routes, 12 regional routes were put forward by the government. Private sector is not interested in those routes. Obviously, private sector would be more interested in the routes where they have got the huge revenue potential. Okay, any other question? Any other question? What is LOD? My dear, what is LOD? I don't know. What is the context you're asking? I absolutely have no idea. You'll pick up one acronym from somewhere, throw it at me, assuming I know what is the context. I do not know all the acronyms in what context that is used will keep on changing. Okay. Okay, done then. Let me stop the discussion today here. Let me stop the discussion today. Tomorrow, let's meet exactly at 5 p.m. I'll give you the list of articles for the last week tomorrow's class. Okay, take care. Good night. We will discuss the questions on investment models tomorrow. We'll also cover the other parts of infrastructure tomorrow. Okay, take care. Good night.